Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. It is Tuesday, May 20th. Another day, another chance to be alive and embrace the nature of existence. Folks, we're alive. We are literally alive and breathing right now, and we get a chance to analyze the markets, hopefully make a little bit of money. Yesterday, although a lot of people thought we would lose money after the Moody's downgrade, that did not happen. We actually ended green on the S&P 500, 594, which was incredible. Robin Hoodie had a little bit of a fun day, up about 4%. And then everything else was relatively flat, down maybe 1 or 2%. But it was not the type of cataclysmic sort of response to the credit downgrade that the market thought we would have. I mean, we pretty much stayed flat. Right now, the pre-market's right here, 593.66, down about 0.2%. You got a HIMSS right here, down about 0.5. NVIDIA, 134.8. Palantir, 127. Robin at 64. I mean, pretty chill morning. Tesla's actually up. We do have some news on Tesla. Tesla right here up 1.17%, 346. But after the downgrade on the United States credit and bond yield spiking to levels that we haven't seen since January, the bond market right here chilling out a little bit right now, 4.485, although Japan has some issues, and we'll talk about what's going on in Japan. Markets are chilling, and markets aren't necessarily reacting as aggressively towards what people thought would happen after the Moody's downgrade that we got on Friday. Regardless, we are here. We got a lot to talk about. QBTS, I didn't look at them in the morning. Where are they? QBTS. Wow, 19%. I did not see that. Congrats to the D-Wave folks. There you go. I'm sure there's a headline that's probably causing that currently right now. We'll look into that in a second. D-Wave, wow, 20% on the day. There's got to be something going on right there that's causing that momentum. This was up 7% yesterday, and then it was up 21% last week, if I'm not wrong. So D-Wave year to date, it is up 36%. It was up aggressively in March, and then it fell all the way to like $5 after Jensen said quantum's like 10 years away. And then Jensen started inviting all these quantum CEOs. So, maybe Jensen wasn't being the most truthful there, but it's up 903% in the past year. So if you took a shot on this stock in the quantum world, you almost got a 10 bagger, which is not too bad. D-Wave announced cloud access this morning. Okay, there you go. I guess that's enough. I'll get more details on that. But looks like cloud access is enough to get this bad boy moving. Yes, it's not profitable, but realistically, you're not buying D-Wave if you care about profits or fundamentals or price to sales. You care about the future of quantum computing. And that could be the reason why most people are even taking a chance on a name like D-Wave. Cool stuff. All right, so we got a bunch of headlines this morning, including one from last night that I don't know if you guys have seen yet, but this headline is a juicy headline. And it's well, it's very exciting to me. It's a little scary as well. And that's going to be the first poll of the day. I want to see how many people are scared or excited by this headline, but it is something that we'll talk about. And it kind of explains why Robinhood went up yesterday when you really think about it. But it also could be something that's helping keep this market afloat. We got some Japan stuff that we'll talk about. Home Depot earnings, they didn't do that bad, and their stock's up 2%, and they're not raising their prices because of tariffs. So I'm sure Trump is very happy to hear that. So we'll talk about the implications of that. Nebius, we've got earnings for them. Their stock's relatively flat in the pre-markets, but apparently they had some massive earnings in terms of annual recurring revenue growth, which is getting the street very excited. Even if the stock is flat, stock is up about 30% from the lows. And then Palantir got a brand new deal. Palantir got another deal with Divergent to revolutionize on-demand advanced manufacturing. So this is more of a supply chain manufacturing warp speed platform deal. Warp speed is the basically reindustrialization platform that Palantir launched about a year ago. And so we have a deal that's very specific to that we'll talk about as well throughout the day as we get into it. So got a lot to talk about. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Suresh, what's up? Greg, Matthew, good morning. Deefin, what's up? The Quiet Journey, hello. Thank you for being here. T. Nelly, Midwest. I'm Beneficial. What's up? Andy, also Googs. We got a big Googs event in, 4 hours, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. I'll be live. I'll be covering Googs. I got some calls that are underwater. It's time for Sundar to save it. By the way, Sundar's tweeting all these pictures like he's putting out a rap album or something. So I am expecting something big. All right, look at how this guy's tweeting. This guy, he's not tweeting like he's going to show up and not deliver. That's the head of Google DeepMind with him. And the caption was having a deep think. I think they're going to announce some shit that's really cool, bro. Even if it's just in the moment the stock moves, I think the stock's going to react to something cool that they announce. And so we got to hope for Sundar to give us some momentum here today. B. Lee, what's up? John, what's up? Kurt, Nolan, good morning. What's up? What's up? Thank you for being here. Oliver, Vinny, Anne Marie, Ginger, Nate, of course, with the hymns comment, because why not? Shout out to hymns. Still holding the 60s, which is very, very nice. June, Johnny Stocks, Christopher, V, Oso, Brandon. Thanks for being alive. Yes, Brandon. Thank you for being alive, and thank you for being here as well. That should be kind of like the phrase, right? We're live and we're alive. I like that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're live and we are live. I do think we underestimate how cool it is to be alive every day. Like, and I'm not even trying to be philosophical here, but like, it is pretty freaking cool to wake up every day and be alive and like just function and like look at stuff and like engage with the world. Because, you know, the inevitable truth is one day we're all not going to be able to do that. And so the fact that we're able to do that is pretty damn cool. We are live and we're alive. All right, let's get into it. This is the big stat I want to get everyone's take on. This news broke last night and it was exciting, but it was also like, all right, you know, how heavy is retail actually becoming part of the market? But it's also like maybe smart money is becoming dumb money and dumb money is truly becoming smart money. Here is the stat. Some of you guys might have seen it. Some of you guys might have not seen it. Here we go. Are you guys ready? Well, hold on. I'm going to make the poll first. Does this stat make you scared? Okay. I'm putting the poll in the chat. There's the poll. Here's the chat. Here's the stat. All right, here we go. Retail investors bought the Moody's dip yesterday in record numbers, surpassing April volumes. As per JP Morgan data, retail investors bought $4.1 billion of stocks, and not just $4 billion of stocks, $4.1 billion of stocks within the first 3 hours of the market open. The first 3 hours, 9:30 to 12:30 Eastern, $4.1 billion of stock was purchased by retail. Now, here's the part that's the most exciting to me, but also potentially a little scary based on how you think about it. The two biggest stocks from retail that were purchased, Palantir and Tesla. Tesla got $675 million of inflows. Palantir got $439 million of inflows. Single stocks were $2.5 billion of the purchases, while ETFs comprised $1.5 billion. The reason I'm asking if this stat makes you scared at all is because retail obviously is playing a bigger role in the market, and retail is buying two of the names that other people could argue are some of the most expensive names in the market, not necessarily institutional investors. Now, look, I don't think that retail is the only reason for Palantir and Tesla maintaining this momentum. Obviously, I think the toots are stepping in to some extent, because I just don't think you can have a Palantir worth $300 billion without retail, or a Tesla worth $1 trillion without institutional. But I still think that is pretty aggressive on a 1% dip. Like if we even want to call it a dip of 1% on Moody's, which lasted for like maybe 5 minutes at 9:30 to 9:35, retail stepped in and they bought. This is an actual chart right here that shows that the retail crowd accounted for 36% of trading volumes. This is from JP Morgan data, surpassing late April to reach the highest level in history when it came to intraday inflows across the entire market. Again, $2.5 billion in individual stocks, $1.5 billion in ETFs across the entire market. I think it's exciting, dude. I think it's exciting. I can understand the fear that some people are having that. So it's like the number one thing that I think most people said if they were bearish when they saw the stock last night is top, right? That retail's getting too excited. Retail's chasing too hard. Retail's pumping up Tesla and Palantir, which are obviously very expensive names, yada, yada, yada. And as a result, we have, this market crash that's coming because retail's getting way too excited. My interpretation of this is a little bit different. So first of all, I'm going to acknowledge, yes, retail is buying expensive names. By the way, a couple more stats on this. Bitcoin was actually the third largest purchase from retail in terms of Bitcoin ETFs. So it wasn't like an actual stock. It was Tesla, Palantir, then Bitcoin ETFs. Bitcoin ETFs have brought in about 6.5 billion in AUM. It was at 107 yesterday. So it makes sense. Retail got excited and they probably started buying more Bitcoin ETFs. NVIDIA, retail was a net seller of. NVIDIA, retail was a net seller of. So NVIDIA actually was not, which is ironic, right? Because NVIDIA is the cheapest out of all of these stocks that are super big tech, but people took their profits on NVIDIA. And if you look at Robinhood's metrics, you can go to an individual stock and kind of look at how their users are participating in the buy and sell volumes. Tesla, Palantir, NVIDIA, and Hood, retail has been a net seller for the past 5 days. I couldn't believe it last night. I went to each of these stocks. In retail, there's a red candle for the last 5 days for Tesla, Palantir, Robinhood, and NVIDIA. So I think there's some nuance to what's going on here. And this is the reason why I don't think it's as scary and why I think it's actually a bit more bullish. Number one, Tesla and Palantir are quality companies. Regardless of their valuations, retail wants to take a chance on Tesla and Palantir. Retail has been the reason why Tesla and Palantir, quite frankly, got to where they are today. So it kind of makes sense to me that in a bull run, before you have the FSD, Palantir just had one of their best earnings in company history. Even though the valuations are aggressive, retail would say, you know what, I want to continue to allocate to this position. I mean, these retail inflows might not have been some random person buying Palantir at 127 for the first time. It could have been someone who bought it at 40 and said, you know what, I just want to add to my position and average up. Now my average is 60, but I'm happy I have more shares. So I think from that perspective, it's not necessarily, oh my God, retail's, buying Palantir and Tesla at these expensive valuations. It could just be, hey, they're adding to their position. Number two, I think the stat that we got yesterday is a direct rebuke of Moody's. It is a direct rebuke of Moody's. Basically, retail saying, hey, we are not falling for the trap. We are not going to give our shares to the hedgies because of some credit rating agency that has lost all credibility. If any of us, aka retail, sold in April due to the tariffs, it was a giant mistake because the tariff volatility was not something to sell into, and majority of retail didn't sell, but any of the retail that did sell is now kind of chasing the rally, and they're probably upset. And any dip that the market gave us in the past month, which has not been many dips, we've been on a 18 out of 21 day win streak on the S&P 500, was going to be bought up. That is what I'm getting from this stat yesterday. And the dip, even if it was 1 to 2% from Moody's, ended up being the dip that got retail to get excited. So this was really cool to see from my perspective. I think it was a rebuke of Moody's. I think it was just a continuation of accelerating inflows into companies that people liked. Could it be a little bit chasing, a little bit FOMO? Of course, but that always happens when, the markets run. And if there's any level, but it wasn't really chasey because it was a dip. I know it was a small dip, but it was a dip. And it's one of those things where this didn't happen on a day where we were making all-time highs, because again, that's when retail tends to sell a little bit into that strength. This was happening on a day where we finally got a dip after 18 days of red, or 18 days of green. And as a result, people took advantage of that. So from that perspective, I thought it was a really cool stat to see. I think there's a lot more momentum going on with retail, and I think the hedge funds are looking at that. And if they try to fade this move, if the hedge funds try to say, you know what, retail's being stupid and we're going to go short Palantir and Tesla, I just think it's going to be a bad option. And quite frankly, they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they know fundamentally there might be some macro issues with this market, but this is not a market you fade. The time to fade it was in February, and if you got your timing right, you got back in April. If you messed up the timing, which most of these hedge fund guys mess, they don't. The reason they have to hedge is because they're not perfectly good at timing, and they don't outperform the S&P 500. So they're probably chasing with us as well for the few that in retail have to chase because they sold in April. And as a result, I think they're potentially buying the Teslas, the Palantirs, the NVIDIAs, the Rocket Labs of the world. Rocket Lab right here, 25.94, it hit 26 in the pre-markets because they have no choice. And so, yeah, that's what I think is going on from those stats, but it was an incredible stat to see as well last night. All right, I think Elon is live right now on Bloomberg. Let me see if I can pull this up. He's at some Qatar forum. Okay, he's not live yet. I have him on. He pops up. I will switch over to him, but he is not live yet. If anyone sees it, let me know. I have my stream and I don't see him there yet. I don't know if he's going to be in person or if he's going to be through Zoom. I think it's probably through Zoom, but yeah, he's not actually live currently right now. But there you go. That's what we got in the context of retail momentum and retail deciding they will continue to buy the dip. Do you talk about Celsius anymore? So, we've always covered Celsius on the channel. Celsius was the natural hedge to the downside. It was the biggest outperformer when things were going south. Celsius right here, 37.57. I really don't know if the fundamentals or the valuation makes a lot of sense right here. I haven't dug deep into that, but it's been a great stock. It's outperformed all the Mag 7. Now that things are green, Celsius started slowing down, which is ironic because when everything was crashing, like Celsius was actually making 52-week highs. So look, not bad for Celsius to be at these levels. Obviously, the Elon new acquisition was really good for them. And now the question is just if the street respects it from an earnings perspective as well. Jason De Silva says, why is your wallpaper not lined up? These are real bricks, Jason De Silva. I know it may look like wallpaper, but that's just, foreign propaganda that I think you shouldn't read too much into. Okay, Nebius, let's talk about them. So Nebius is up 1.35%. Apparently they crushed earnings, like legitimately crushed earnings. And the market's very excited about that. So Nebius delivered 175% annual recurring revenue growth quarter over quarter in Q1, followed by 25% growth in April alone. They are assuming to do $750 million to $1 billion of revenue by December 2025. The market is obviously very excited about this. Now, the stock was already up a lot going into the print, so that's why the stock is not really moving that much. The revenues right here, 55.3 versus 57.7. That's a miss by 4%, and then 13% EPS beats. They lost 39 cents a share. They're expected to lose 45 cents a share. So not too bad for a company that is trading at 50% cash, and that is still, a big player, or what could be a very big player in the data center AI space as well. Kris right here says they missed earnings, but they are doing well in guidance. Yeah, again, that ARR growth that they guided for, it's pretty incredible, dude. That even the 25% month over month growth was just insanity, 250 to 310 million. And it goes to show that this CoreWeave, Nebius type of overall market around GPUs and reselling and being able to rent out compute, like it's not going anywhere. And one of the reasons for that is because of NVIDIA. Obviously, NVIDIA having a 7% stake in CoreWeave is showing really big numbers. And those numbers are trickling down to these third-party companies as well. You guys are saying Trump is live. Where is Trump? Hold on. They said he was going live at 1 p.m. Not right now. Is he going live right now? I don't see him live on his channel. Trump's talking about the tax bill. Oh, there he is. Okay, here we go. He's in Congress.
In this country, who would sign this? Nobody would sign it. No sane person would sign it. You know who signed it? Radical left lunatics that were running our country, and the Autopen signed it. And they didn't want him, and they were disappointed in getting him because they wanted Bernie Sanders. And then after about 2 weeks, they said, wait a minute, this is a gift. He'll do anything. We're going to use the Autopen. And they used the Autopen and everything. He didn't approve this stuff because when Joe Biden was with it, he would never have approved it. You take a look. He would have never approved open borders. Go ahead, another one.
Are Republicans still grandstanding in your view?
Oh, yeah, sure. You have a couple that will grandstand, but I think even the grandstanders should. Look, the alternative is a 68% tax increase. And you can blame the Democrats for that and one or two grandstanders. We only have one or two, but we have tremendous support. But you'll have a 68% tax increase, or you'll get a massive tax decrease. You'll get a tax cut, the likes of which we've never had before. This is bigger than any Ronald Reagan tax cut. It's even bigger than the tax cut that I gave, because as you know, that's being extended and increased. So this is the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, or you'll get a 68% tax increase. And if that happens, I mean, what Republican could vote for that to happen? Because there wouldn't be a Republican much longer. They would be knocked out so fast. But we're going up to details. This is I'm a cheerleader for this party, and I'm a cheerleader for the country, much more importantly for the country. But I'm a cheerleader for the party, and we're going to go up, and I think we're going to have a very good discussion. There are one or 2 points that some people feel strongly about, but maybe not so strong.
On one of those points, do you consider some of the proposals on the table, like co-pay and provider tax, as a benefit cut? How are you viewing those?
No, we are looking at one thing. We're not doing any cutting of anything meaningful. The only thing we're cutting is waste, fraud, and abuse. With Medicaid, waste, fraud, and abuse. There's tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. There's incompetent things with it. We have illegal aliens that are multiple killers with multiple murder records getting Medicaid. I don't think anybody minds if we cut that. The Democrats, on the other hand, are going to destroy it because they're going to leave these people on. We're cutting 3 things: waste, fraud, and abuse. We're not changing Medicaid, and we're not changing Medicare, and we're not changing Social Security. And if I wanted to do those things, I would have done it during my 4 years that we were.
Mr. President, what's your message to your fellow New Yorker Republicans who are hung up on the SALT issue?
Well, SALT is a very interesting thing because the governors of New York and Illinois, the big JB who's going nowhere. Probably right now he could be the worst governor in the country. But Illinois and Gavin Newsom, those are the people that want this. And they're Democrat states. They're all Democrat states. Ronald Reagan tried very hard to get this passed, was unable to do it the way we have it, where basically everybody's treated equally. He tried it so hard and he never got it done. He was always disappointed. He never got it done. We got it done. Now people want to change it. So we're going to be talking about that. But the biggest beneficiary, if we do that, are governors from New York, Illinois, and California. And those governors are the ones that blew it because they weren't able to get it. So I think we're going to be explaining that these are all very blue states that I don't really believe. If we had honest elections, I don't actually believe. I think I would have won California. I would have won New York. I even think I would have won Illinois. I think we have to, we're going to start this after. I was talking to Mike, and again, I'm his biggest fan. I love this guy. He's the only guy who could have walked in with a one. Think of it. You can't be a guy like me and have a one majority. You have to be a guy like him, a nice person. He's very religious. He prays. He's a man of God. And so am I, but he's really to a new level. I will tell you. He is a great guy. They love him in Louisiana. They love him that's the only kind of guy. Somebody said, oh, well, we want somebody that if you put a certain personality in there, you would have never, look at what he got passed, what he's gotten passed. And just so you understand, he's getting this passed too. And I don't think there's anybody I could give you guys that is so tough. You guys would run if you ever looked at him. If you ever saw some of these guys, you would not ask him questions. You'd be afraid to. This guy did something that I don't think there's anybody that's more well-suited to be a Speaker of the House, especially in a case like this. Remember, we had a majority of one for 6 months. And that was a very frightening thing because the Democrats have really hurt our country. And we are going to go into very much, remember what I said, the auto pay. This government was illegally run for 4 years. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
DOJ be charging a member of Congress?
All right, so that is President Trump in Congress trying to navigate a very dicey and hard piece of legislation, which he calls the One Big Beautiful Bill, that he is trying to get passed. It's not going to be easy to get that thing passed. It's going to be rather difficult, although I think he's going to get it passed because inevitably the Republicans will get on his side. This is kind of just the part of politics that every politician has to go through. There's some people. This is what I think. I think there was one person that was flaking on the Democrats on the Inflation Reduction Act. I forgot the name of them, but Biden had to go visit them and wine and dine them and talk to them. And then Obama had to do this with a bunch of Republicans when he was trying to get the ACA passed. I mean, this is what you have to do when you want to get a major piece of legislation passed. So he's going through the hard part right now of trying to convince everyone that the way that he's architected this tax bill is the right way to do it. Obviously, the bond market is not happy about it, given that we see yields are rising. Now, again, they've calmed down since yesterday. We were at 4.6, basically. Now we're at 4.493. Still not good, but I guess the market is looking towards other ways, potentially SLR ratios or the Fed stepping in, which would be really good for Bitcoin to be able to get these bond yields to come down. Tom Lee's argument yesterday was that we haven't had a bond auction that has failed yet, so it's not really a concern until we have a bond auction that really doesn't have the type of demand that we would expect. Then we should be concerned because then people legitimately are saying, hey, we don't want to buy U.S. debt. But the only reason bond yields are up right now is not because of Moody's. It's because if you look at the tax bill, the deficit's going up. And Besant's argument, Trump's argument, the GOP's argument, the ones that agree with it are basically, hey, we'll outgrow it, which quite frankly is kind of the only argument they have. But it's up to the bond market ultimately now to believe that that's actually going to happen. Speaking of bonds, let's transition over to Japan and what's going on in Japan. So last night, not the best morning for Japan, but night for the rest of the world. 30-year on Japan, the 30-year government bond hit a new high since 2007, 3.13%. It has been its highest level ever, 3.15. For decades, Japan was known for long-term interest rates. That's kind of not happening right now. Japan holds about 1.1 trillion of U.S. debt. And again, we talked about this yesterday. The Prime Minister of Japan, Ishiba, called the situation worse than Greece. Why is Japan's 30-year spiking? Why is Japan's 40-year spiking as well? I mean, people are not buying Japanese bonds. That's like the number one issue right here. And the reason people are not buying Japanese bonds could be for a variety of issues, but that is kind of the fundamental argument, right? The fact that people are not buying these bonds is leading to them to continue to inch higher. Now, the other problem about this is that Japan actually failed, or not failed, but they didn't have a successful bond auction. And that's another reason why the yields went higher. So Japan had a 20-year government bond auction, not the 30-year, not the 40-year, not the 10-year, a 20-year. That was last night. It was the weakest 20-year bond auction since 1987. AKA the demand to buy Japanese debt, those 20-year bonds, has been the weakest in over 40 years. The 40-year yield last night hit an all-time high, while the 30-year yield reached its highest since it was in 1999, and the 20-year yield hit its highest since 2000. So from that perspective, it obviously was not a very good thing for Japan. And a lot of people are wondering right now, hey, last time this kind of happened was August 5th, 2024. And a lot of people were short the yen. Yen spiked. They had to cover their short, and they had to, in order to cover their short, sell U.S. assets, which led to that kind of 4-hour meltdown that we had. Now this is a little bit more different. It's around the actual treasury bond that is spiking at the 20, 30, and 40-year level. What does that mean for U.S. equities? What does that mean for the credit markets? And ultimately, what does that mean for how the market perceives the global financial situation we're in right now? Let's get someone on to help us understand all this stuff. Kris Patel, good morning.
What's going on? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. So the answer to this is, believe it or not, rice. I know that sounds stupid, but so Japan has been going through some changes in terms of FX. Basically, the Japanese yen has depreciated significantly against the US dollar, right? So if you look at the price of the US dollar to Japanese yen, it was like $1. $1 was about 100 yen, and it stayed around there. And Japan had a really big problem with deflation. So what they've been doing is something called yield. They've been stimulating via yield curve control. Now, if you go to that, go to this chart and do like a 5-year breakdown, right? So you can see that giant rise that's in from yen from 2021 all the way to now. So the Japanese, the BOJ, they started to see this inflation creep up. A couple of reasons why the inflation started to creep up was, of course, the price of rice. I know that sounds stupid, but that's one of the things that they have had. And food inflation started to go up. And because some parts of the food curve went up, a lot of consumers went out there and started buying stuff because they're like, oh, we're going to get higher inflation in the future. Let's buy more rice. And so a lot of people were hoarding food. So that's one of the reasons. The other thing is because the Japanese yen has weakened against the US dollar. Japan imports everything in. It imports energy, it imports food. So if you have a currency that's devalued, right, now you need to spend more in order to buy those same goods and services. Now, one of the reasons why we saw a decline in the Japanese yen and the strengthening of the US dollar is because the US, we've been tightening, right? So more money has been going to the US trying to get that yield. Now, Japan, inflation is rising because of this FX thing. And then you have all this issues with tariffs. So it's kind of causing all sorts of like second order effects in the background. So the solution here is pretty straightforward.
Let me guess. Maybe I'm wrong on this, but J Powell has to cut rates.
Yeah. So if J Powell cuts rates, now what happens is the US dollar weakens, which is the goal of the administration, right? US dollar weakens. It makes importing stuff into Japan cheaper, which means now the inflation problem in Japan starts to go in the other direction, which means the Japanese Japan also has to go back to doing yield curve control as well. So that's another thing. So, yeah.
Okay, so here's the big question that everyone cares about. Could there be another yen carry trade, and could this mean people sell off U.S. tech stocks if this 30-year keeps rising?
I have no clue, bro. I have no clue. Everything is moving so crazy. I don't know. They had some earthquake stuff too. Last 2 springs, Japan have had pretty dry, and rice harvest suffered. Yeah. And they also had some earthquake. It's like I said, it's a very fluid thing that's happened. The other thing is Japan, because the currency's devalued, there's been a crap ton of people going to Japan for tourism also.
Yeah.
So that's just money coming into the system. So Japan is growing nicely, but at the same time, you've also got a ton of inflation. So on a real GDP basis, you're not growing that much, right? So just because your GDP is growing, but if inflation is growing at the same time, that kind of like negates that growth. So you typically want high levels of GDP growth with low inflation. That's where you get real GDP growth. That's what Besant is trying to engineer right now in the background, where, you know, he said yesterday, we want GDP to grow, but we also want inflation to come down. So I don't know how it's going to happen, but basically Powell needs to cut rates because the challenge here is that the Fed, Kashkari came on yesterday, and you know what this guy said? He said, well, you know, we're just gonna have to see how things play out. And it's like that's like braking after you've hit the back of the front, you know, the car in front of you. You know what I mean?
How do these people get elected to be part of the Fed? It's a
Well,
wait and see until we get more. Like, really? Are you kidding me?
Well, the thing is, they've got the monetary. I mean, they've got the ability to react very quickly. That's what the Fed is basically banking on, saying, "Look, we don't know what's going to happen with regards to these tariffs. If inflation starts to creep up, we don't want to be in a position where we have to re-raise interest rates and then throw the entire market into chaos." So they're like, "All right, we'll just wait until the data comes out that says that inflation is under control." And to me, I'm like, everything is pointing towards everything being under control. You've had permission.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I was getting this argument from a lot of people yesterday. If Walmart said they're raising their prices, why does that mean inflation is under control? Won't people have to pay more?
Well, you have to look at this in terms of like GDP. Like, what is the total GDP that's going to be tariffed? Like, imports only make up $4 trillion total, and then if you take away all the exemptions, like, you know, like the ones that we have with like Mexico and Canada and all this other stuff, the total impact of tariffs actually is like 15% on imported goods. Okay, which turns out to be like, you know, a couple of percentage, not even a couple of percentage points. Like in total, it's a very small amount. On the other hand, you're seeing all these other things going to massive disinflation. You've got energy prices that are way down, right?
Yep.
You've got FX way down. So, you know, the dollar has been weakened significantly. So, you know what I mean? Like I said, energy prices are under control. Like last year, this time, oil was at close to $85 a barrel. You know, like right there. Look at that. So it was around $80 a barrel. Now it's 62. You know, so that's one of the things. The other thing is also like shelter inflation's come down significantly. Like one of the things that I put up on my Twitter yesterday, I don't know if you saw this, but go to Zillow rents. There's a huge move down in go to Zillow rental data, and a lot of markets supposedly are seeing a decline in rent all at one time. Like I said, I don't know how accurate it is, to be honest.
Did you tweet the picture of it?
Brent crude, not crude oil. Brent crude and oh god, whatever.
Yeah, that's regardless. Oil is coming down. Yeah, this is
WTI and Brent. Like, you know, there's like a few dollars in difference, but it's not that big of a deal. But this right here, I was kind of weird. I don't know if this is like a data point, but majority of the one bedrooms that are in this like Zillow category, they were on the decline. So I'm trying to figure out, like, is this just a data issue or is this a real thing? And the thing is it continuous? And when will this actually show up on the Fed's radar? You know?
Well, I think all of us can acknowledge it's time for the Fed to cut rates. I mean, look, the stock market's not really affected or not looking like it's being affected by what's going on in Japan. And I feel like if there was a bigger issue, Tesla and Palantir and Nvidia would not be at these levels if people were that worried about Japanese debt. But I think there will be an issue, and I think you would agree. And Tom Lee said this yesterday. If our bond auctions look like Japan's 20-year bond auction last night, and we don't have enough demand, that's when people might start getting upset.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think Besant and Trump are smart enough to make some phone calls ahead of time before the auction to make sure it goes smoothly, you know? So this way we don't have a major crisis. Now, on the other hand, when I see this dip by retail, I feel like this is like retail becoming trained Every time there's a dip, just buy it. Every
Yep.
time there's a dip, just buy it. And the thing is, this
And
could
it's
very
worked.
well
It's worked for the past couple of years, right? I mean,
right. And that's the problem, though. The more it keeps working, the bigger problem it becomes, because then you could have like a 2021 kind of event where everyone was just buying SPACs, and then even the most unprofitable SPACs, people were just buying into them. So sometimes what happens is when you get this reinforcing mechanism, it could cause some problems later on. I mean,
yeah, we got to hope it's not exactly that same macro environment. All right, Kris, we got Elon talking, so I'm
Yep.
gonna switch him right here.
I'm out of here. I'll talk to you later, man. Just came on to talk about this Japan thing. So
all right, appreciate you, Kris. Talk later.
Take care. Later.
All right, folks, here's Elon. We got 7 minutes until the market opens.
I think on the current value of stock options, I think the actual
justice according to the law.
on the current value of stock options, I think the value of that pay package stands at about $100 billion. Are you saying you are relaxed about the value of your future pay package? Your decision to be committed to Tesla for the next 5 years, as long as you are still with us on this planet, is completely independent of pay?
No.
It's not independent. So pay is a relevant factor then to your commitment to Tesla.
A sufficient voting control such that I cannot be ousted by activist investors is what matters to me. And I've said this publicly many times. But let's not have this whole thing be a discussion of my alleged pay. It's not a money thing. It's a reasonable control thing over the future of the company, especially if we're building millions, potentially billions of humanoid robots. I can't be sitting there and wanting to get tossed out by, for political reasons, by activists. That would be unacceptable. That's all that matters. Now let's move on.
Okay. Well, just one question.
Let's move on.
Well, one question before we move on to other companies, which is that I wonder if some of what has happened to Tesla in the last few months, did you take it personally?
Yes.
And did it make you regret or think twice about your political endeavors? Because I
did what needed to be done. The violent antibody reaction, and I'm not someone who's ever committed violence, and yet massive violence was committed against my companies. Massive violence was threatened against me. Who are these people? Why would they do that? How wrong can they be? They're on the wrong side of history, and that's an evil thing to do. To go and damage some poor innocent person's car, to threaten to kill me. What's wrong with these people? I've not harmed anyone. So something needs to be done about them. And a number of them are going to prison, and they deserve it. And more will.
You're referring to the attacks on Tesla showrooms, but I think
Firing bullets into showrooms and burning down cars is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Those people will go to prison, and the people that funded them and organized them will also go to prison. Don't worry.
But wouldn't you?
We're coming for you.
Wouldn't you? But wouldn't you acknowledge that some of the people who turned against Tesla in Europe were upset at your politics, and very few of them would have been violent in any way. They just objected to what they saw you say or do politically.
Well, it's certainly fine to object to political things, but it's not fine to resort to violence and hanging someone in effigy and death threats. That's obviously not okay. That's absurd. That is in no way justifiable at all, in any way, shape, or form. And some of the legacy media nonetheless have sought to justify it, which is unconscionable. Shame on them.
Let's talk about your other companies then and other business areas, SpaceX. I saw that you said in a speech at the West Point Military Academy recently that the future of warfare is AI and drones. And obviously defense is an increasingly booming sector with the state of the world at the moment. Do you see SpaceX moving into weaponized drones?
You certainly ask interesting questions that are impossible to answer. SpaceX is it's the space launch leader. So SpaceX doesn't do drones. SpaceX builds rockets, satellites, and internet terminals. So SpaceX has a very dominant position in space launch. So of the mass launch to orbit this year, SpaceX will probably do 90%. China will do the half of the remaining amount, so 5%, and the rest of the world, including the rest of the US, will do about 5%. So SpaceX will do about 10 times as much as the rest of the world combined, or 20 times as much as China, and China is doing actually a very impressive job. The reason for this is that we are putting into orbit the largest satellite constellation the world has ever seen by far. So I think at this point, about maybe approaching 80% of all active satellites in orbit are SpaceX. And they're providing high bandwidth global connectivity throughout the world. In fact, this connection is on a SpaceX connection. So I think this is a very good thing because it means that we can provide low cost, high bandwidth internet to parts of the world that don't have it or where it's very expensive. And I think the single biggest thing you can do to lift people out of poverty and help them is giving them an internet connection. Because once you have the internet connection, you can learn anything for free on the internet. And you can also sell your goods and services to the global market. Once you have knowledge by the internet and the ability to engage in commerce, that this is going to greatly improve quality of life for people throughout the world, and it has. And I'd just like to thank anyone in the audience who may have been helpful in, with Starlink and getting it to approved in their country. And I think it's doing a lot of good in the countries that have approved it, which is, I think at this point, 130 countries are very happy with it. I don't currently anticipate SpaceX getting into the weapons business. That's not an aspiration. We're frequently asked to do weapons programs, but we have thus far declined.
Do you envisage SpaceX or indeed Starlink as a separate entity publicly listing in the near future or at all?
It's possible that Starlink may go public at some point in the future.
And what would be the time frame?
All right, folks, we will get back to Elon in just a little bit. Let's see what we got going on. It is May 20th, 9:30 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The stock market is now open. Wake your ass up. Here we go. Tessie, 350. Not too bad. Look like whatever Elon said is getting the market excited. 349.35 right here. Tesla got $675 million of inflows yesterday from retail investors. Tesla right here up another 1.71%. People are buying as Elon is speaking. 348 right here on Tessie. Robinhood opens up today at 64. It was up 4% yesterday, holding that 64 level, which is not too bad. Rocket Lab, 2580 was 26 in the pre-markets. Hopefully we can get back to that 26 level. Rocket Lab right here, 2581 currently right now. Palantir, 127. That's up about 0.5%. Nvidia basically flat on the day, or actually down about 1%. 134.52. Tessie again, 349. SoFi 1360. SoFi's down 1%. Amazon's down 0.5%. Meta's down 0.5%. Google, which has a big event, I'll be streaming that live in about 4 hours, that is down 0.5%. Microsoft is down 0.5%. Big tech looks like it's taking a little bit of a dip. Apple is down again 0.5%. So all of big tech besides Tesla up 2.2%. There you go. 350.97. It did touch for a second. Is green on the day. CoreWeave up another 1.5% after being up 20% last week and 7% up yesterday. The Qs are slightly red, 0.5%, given big tech is mainly down 0.5%. IWM flat on the day. VIX is down a little bit. The S&P 500, 593.38. We ended at 594 yesterday, so that one's down about 0.24% currently right now. The semiconductors, let's take a look at them. Robinhood, by the way, 63.76. Palantir, 127.60. We have a new partnership with Palantir. We'll talk about it in a second. And we'll get to them. Tesla right here, 350.18. Kathy Wood bought a lot of TSM yesterday, 197,000 shares. TSM right here, 191. That's down 1%. Dell's down 0.5%. Broadcom's down 0.5%. Micron's down 1%. AMD's down 1%. NVIDIA down 1.23. I don't know why the semis are down. I don't know why this, maybe it's just they're selling off a little bit after a good week they had last week, but not sure exactly what the semis are red. Supermicro down 1.5, Qualcomm down 0.7, Marvell down 3.35. Home Depot, they beat on EPS, slightly missed on revenue. Home Depot right here is up 3%. They're up 1.5%. CFO said they're not raising prices because of tariffs. Trump's probably very happy about that. Home Depot up about 1% currently right now. D-Wave, this one, absolutely incredible. They signed a new cloud deal this morning. Market's very excited about that one, up 13% on the day. It was up about 8% yesterday. So maybe some people knew that that cloud deal was coming yesterday, and that's why people were getting excited. But there you go on D-Wave, 1480, one of the best performers in the quantum space all year. Robinhood's still at 64. Wow, Tessie, 352. Broke through 351. Broke through 352. I was going to check resistance at 351, but apparently I don't need to anymore. Let's check resistance at 353 for Tesla. Wow, dude. I mean, maybe people are buying based on whatever Elon's saying, but the market is definitely excited right here. 353 on Tesla. We haven't seen these levels since December of 2024 when the stock was above 400. 353's resistance is 12,000 shares. I think there's a decent shot we can break above 353. Tesla right here up 3%. Currently on the day. Currently on the day, getting some momentum. I mean, look, dude, retail bought the dip yesterday on Tesla to the tune of almost $700 million. So retail up about 4 or 5% since they bought that dip. Hoodie holding over 64. One of the reasons I think Robinhood was up so much is because I think when some of these advanced hedge funds, money managers saw the level of retail inflows, again, if you missed the stat, $4.1 billion of stocks and ETFs, 2.5 billion stocks, 1.5 billion ETFs were bought yesterday within the first 3 hours of the market open, 9:30 to 12:30 Eastern. I think some of the bigger institutions saw that data and they were like, holy crap, we got to buy some Robinhood, because that is obviously pointing towards a massive Q2 for Robinhood if that momentum can continue. And retail is obviously very excited and participating in the markets, which is bullish. Hood. Rocket Lab right here, 2556. That's down about 1%. NVIDIA, again, down 1%. Don't really know why it's down. Maybe giving up some gains from yesterday. But that one is down. Tessie, 353. There she goes. There was only 12,000 shares waiting there. 354. Let's check that. 354 resistance is 354 resistance is 10,000 shares. That's not a lot, dude. That's not a lot. I mean, there's not really heavy walls that are waiting at these levels. Nebius, they missed on earnings, but they raised guidance. They are up 0.4%. Again, this stock was up like 20% going into the print. So I don't think anyone should be discouraged by the stock action if you're in the name. The actual growth of the company, just phenomenal. Like absolutely incredible. They're growing 25% quarter over quarter and over 100% year over year in the data center space. 50% of their market cap is cash. I don't have an investment in it. I personally am just buying more NVIDIA, but I think the investment thesis is pretty clear here. And as long as they keep executing them and CoreWeave, they should be able to do well. But NVIDIA right here, 133.92. That's probably another reason why Nebius is down. I mean, NVIDIA going down, all the semis are down. You got some of these data center plays that are getting hit. VRT is down, makes sense as a data center play. And then Vistra is also down on the day with the semis. What's the next big wall on Tesla? The next big wall on Tesla, like the one that will be hard. Dude, realistically, I mean, okay, so I guess the next major one, which isn't really a major one, is 355 at 100,000 shares. The real big one is at 359. There you got about 250,000 shares. But in between those dollars, there's like 20,000 shares, 30,000 shares, like in the 356, 357, 358. I don't see any massive wall at all. There's not like 800,000 shares waiting at 357 that have to be bought up. So it could be all clear skies for Tesla right here. And we're seeing it up $12. But there you go. There's 354. That's not, there's not walls, folks. There are not walls here. At 355, there's 49,000 shares, which is more than the 10,000 at 354. But still, that's kind of nothing compared to the type of volume that Tesla trades every single day. So really not that hard for it to make a run if it wants to make a run. 3.46% right there. NVIDIA, 133.94. Robinhood, 64.25. Amazon, 204 on the day. Meta, 636. You got Googs again, their event today. We'll see what Sundar ends up saying 166.35. Grab. So Grab taxi drivers and GoTo taxi drivers in Southeast Asia, they're protesting right now. I'll get some more information on what's going on, but a lot of drivers are protesting for some reason. So that could be one of the reasons why Grab is down 1% right here. That could be a bit of a headwind, given they might have to navigate that situation right there. I'll get more updates, but there is some protests going on in Southeast Asia that could be causing some pain for a company like Grab. Uber right here, SMCI down 1.85%. Uber 92.91. That's down there. That's up about 0.5%. Cisco down about 0.43. And then Tessie trying to make its way to 355. There you go. All right, cool. Let's go back to Elon. Let's see some other stuff he has to say. That'll probably explain what's going on with Tesla, and then we will keep going from there.
What kind of time frame are you considering?
I'm in no rush. I'm in no rush to go public. Public is, I guess, a way to potentially make more money, but at the expense of a lot of public company overhead and inevitably a whole bunch of lawsuits, which are very annoying. So really, something needs to be done about the shareholder derivative lawsuits in the U.S. Because it allows plaintiffs' law firms who don't represent the shareholders to pretend that they represent the shareholders by getting a puppet plaintiff with a few shares to initiate a massive lawsuit against the company. And the irony being that, extreme irony, that even if the class they purport to represent were to vote that they don't want the lawsuit would still continue. So how can it be a class action representing a class if the class vote against it? And that's the bizarre situation we've got in the U.S. It's a dire need of reform. As anyone who's running a public company experienced this, it's an absurd situation that needs to change.
Well, do you think Donald Trump might change it? You've certainly got his ear. I imagine that you've put this to him. Is this something you're trying to change before any Starlink IPO?
Well, it would need a law to be passed. The trouble being that you need 60 Senate votes, and the Democrats will vote against it. The plaintiff's bar is, I believe, the second largest contributor to the Democratic Party. That's the
Tesla 354.30. Pretty much everything's going red besides Tesla and Robinhood. Pretty much everything is red right now. All of big tech. Palantir's red, green just slightly. Nvidia's red. Tesla and Robinhood are the ones that are leading today, and they're in the green, along with D-Wave as well. That's up about 18% right now.
Issue at the state level, this can be solved, and I should say Texas recently passed a law which, at least the state level, made lawsuits much more reasonable, because you have to get at least 1 in 33 shareholders to agree that they are part of a class of shareholders. 3%. Okay. This will really help with frivolous lawsuits.
Okay. Let's talk about AI, which is in so many of your businesses and in all our worlds in different ways. It's one of the big changes, the development of generative AI, since you last spoke to this forum 3 years ago. You're in this space, of course, with Grok, which almost everyone will know. You co-founded OpenAI and then left, and you've obviously got a legal battle with OpenAI and Sam Altman. I wonder if you could say something about the status of that.
Oh boy. All right, let's hear what he has to say about the lawsuit with OpenAI. They are still in litigation, and they probably will be for the next few years.
Because you were together in Saudi Arabia with the president last week, with Sam Altman. In the same place at the same time.
Sam was in the neighborhood.
Okay, so does that mean you are pushing ahead with the lawsuit against OpenAI?
Yes. So look, I came up with the name OpenAI as an open source and as a nonprofit.
Elon said he's going to keep suing him. Elon's not taking away the lawsuit. There you go.
I funded OpenAI for the first roughly $50 million. It was intended to be a nonprofit open source company. And now they're trying to change that for their own financial benefit into a for-profit company that is closed source. So this would be like, let's say you funded a nonprofit to help preserve the Amazon rainforest. But instead of doing that, they became a lumber company, chopped down the forest and sold the wood. You'd be like, wait a second, that's not what I funded. That's OpenAI.
They've made some changes to their corporate structure, though, haven't they? Since in recognition of what you've said. And
No, that's just what they told the media.
okay. They have
Tesla losing some of its gains. It was at 354. Now we're at 350. It's up 2.3%. Broader market's kind of trying to go a little bit green, but I do see a lot of red candles across the board. Tesla now holding up, but it is losing about $4 from where it was.
They have partly walked back their plan to restructure the business. I guess that's made no difference to how you feel about it. So you're determined to see them in court?
Of course.
Okay. Well, that's certainly going to be one to watch. I also wanted to ask you about AI and regulation, because when you were here last talking to John Micklethwaite, you had some pretty strong words about the risk that AI poses, and you said that you really felt what the US was missing was a federal AI regulator, that something along the lines of the Food and Drug Administration or the Federal Aviation Administration. Now, you're clearly now in a zone where you're more on the cutting regulation side than wanting new regulators. So has your view changed on the need for an AI regulator?
Well, it's not that I don't think there should be regulators. You can think of regulators like referees on the field in sports. There should be some number of referees, but you shouldn't have so many referees that you can't kick the ball without hitting one. In most fields in the US, the regulatory burden has grown over time to the point where it's like having more referees than players on the field. And this is a natural consequence of an extended period of prosperity. It's very important to appreciate this. This has happened throughout history. When you have an extended period of prosperity with no existential war, there's no cleansing function for unnecessary laws and regulations. So what happens is that every year, more laws and more regulations are passed because legislators are going to legislate, regulators are going to regulate. And you will get the steady pile of more and more laws and regulations over time until everything is illegal. And let me give you an example of a truly absurd situation. Under the Biden administration, SpaceX was sued for not hiring asylum seekers in the US. Now, the problem is it's actually illegal for SpaceX under ITAR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations, to hire anyone who is not a permanent resident of the United States, because the premise being that they will take advanced rocket technology and return to their home country if they're not a permanent resident. So we're simultaneously in a situation where it is illegal to hire asylum seekers, and it is also illegal to hire asylum seekers. And the Biden's Department of Justice chose to prosecute us despite both paths being illegal. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
But my question was specifically about a regulator for AI, which you said 3 years ago was needed. And you said we need to be proactive on the regulation of AI rather than reactive. Have you changed your mind on that?
No, of course not. No, of course not. What I'm saying is that there should be some referees on the field, a few referees, but you shouldn't have a field jam-packed with referees such that you could not kick a ball in any direction without hitting one. So the fields that have been around for a long time, such as automotive, so aerospace, the sort of food and drug industries, are over-regulated, but the new fields, like artificial intelligence, are under-regulated. In fact, there is no regulator at all.
So there should be.
So
Do you still think that?
Yes, I'm simply saying, which I think is just basic common sense, that you want to have at least you want to have a few referees in the field. You don't want to have an army of referees, but you want to have a few referees on any given field, in any given sport, or even any given arena, industrial arena, to ensure that public safety is taken care of. But you don't want to have so there's a proper number of referees. Like I said, it's actually very easy to visualize this when compared to sports. If the whole field is packed with referees, that would look absurd. But if there were no referees at all, your game is not going to be as good.
Okay. So
I would say that's pretty reasonable. Tesla, by the way, 347, 354 to 347. So that pump that we saw in the first 5 minutes, if it doesn't recover, it was definitely just a pump. And now it is selling off with the rest of the market currently right now.
let's then talk about your new world, your role advising government. You are in this unique and unprecedented position of having billions of dollars worth of contracts with the federal government yourself, mostly through SpaceX, and also now an insider's knowledge of it because of Doge. Can you see that there is a conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest in broad terms just through that very fact?
I don't think so, actually. There have been many advisors throughout history and the US government and others who have had economic interests. And I am simply an advisor. I don't have formal power. And that's it. The president can choose to accept my advice or not. And that's how it goes. If there's a single contract that any of my companies have received that people think is somehow not was awarded improperly, it would immediately be front page news, to say the least. And if I didn't mention it, certainly my competitors would. So if you're not seeing that, then clearly there's not a conflict of interest.
There's another way, though, to look at it, that, for example, you have many competitors, whether it's companies like Boeing or companies who would like to do more of the kind of work you do for NASA, Blue Origin, Rocket Lab. And because Doge is in every federal government department, you or people who work for Doge, and you are the driving force behind it, have an insight into those companies' affairs and those companies' relationships with the federal government.
No, all we do is we review the organization to see if the organization has departments that are no longer relevant, and then are the contracts that are being awarded good value for money? In fact, frankly, the bar is not particularly high. Is there any value for money in a contract? And if there isn't, then we make recommendations to the secretary. The secretary can then choose to take those actions or not take those actions, and that's it. And then any action that is as a function of Doge is posted to the Doge website and to the Doge.gov or at Doge handle on the X platform. So it's complete transparency, and I have not seen any case where, to the best of my knowledge, there's even been an accusation of conflict, because it is completely and utterly transparent.
Okay.
That's it.
And what about the international dimension? Now, let's think about Starlink. Starlink is obviously a very, very good internet service. It's sought after all over the world. It's critical to the front line in Ukraine. It has also had more contracts coming its way, and there is some evidence that companies are allowing access to it because they want to be close to the Trump administration and send the right signal. So Bloomberg broke news today that the South African government is working around the rules on black ownership in order to allow Starlink in, and that is being done on the eve of the visit that President Ramaphosa is going to make to the White House. Do you recognize that as a conflict of interest?
No, of course not. First of all, you should be questioning why are there racist laws in South Africa? That's the first problem. That's what you should be attacking. It's improper for there to be racist laws in South Africa. The whole idea with what Nelson Mandela, who was a great man, proposed was that all races should be on an equal footing in South Africa. That's the right thing to do, not to replace one set of racist laws with another set of racist laws, which is utterly wrong and improper. So that's the deal, that all races should be treated equally, and there should be no preference given to one or the other. Whereas there are now 140 laws in South Africa that give that basically give strong preference to if you're a black South African, and not otherwise. And so now I'm in this absurd situation where I was born in South Africa but cannot get a license to operate in Starlink because I'm not black.
Well, it looks
Does
like
that
that's
seem
about.
right
Look,
to
it
you?
looks
Does
like
seem
that.
right to you?
Looks like that's about to change.
I just asked you a question. Please answer. Does that seem right to you?
Well, those rules were designed to
Does that seem
bring.
right to you, yes or no?
Those rules were designed to bring about an era of more economic equality in South Africa, and it looks like the government has found a way around those rules for you.
Ask you a question.
This is your interview. Everyone wants to hear from you.
Ask you a question. Yes or no?
Not for
Racist
me.
laws, yes or no?
Not for me to answer. I have got a question for you about your government
must
work,
like
though, and the
racist laws,
amount of
then.
savings.
Why do you like racist laws?
This is not for me to answer. Come on.
Yes, it is.
Now, you wouldn't be trying to dodge a question.
So you have to
that
ask a
is difficult
question.
for
I
you
answer
to
my
answer,
question.
would you?
No, you answer
Look,
mine.
I think I'm sure you can have that conversation directly with the South African government if you want to. I want to ask you about the total.
I can't believe it. That's not good.
I want to ask you about the total
How do you love
amount.
racist laws?
I want to ask you about the total amount that you're planning to save through Doge's work. Before the election, you said it was going to be at least 2 trillion. The number currently on doge.gov is $170 billion. That's a big change. What happened to the 2 trillion?
Or do you expect it to happen immediately?
Well, is it going to happen? Because Doge is supposed to run till next July.
I mean, your question is absurd in its fundamental premise. Are you assuming that on day, within a few months, this an instant 2 trillion saved?
No, I'm not at all. I'm just asking, is that still your aim then? Is it still your aim to get to 2 trillion?
The amount of time? Have we not made good progress given the amount of time?
That's exactly what I'm asking. So is it still your aim to go from 170 billion to 2 trillion?
The ability of Doge to operate is a function of whether the government, and this includes the Congress, is willing to take our advice. We're not the dictators of the government, we are the advisors. And so we can advise, and the progress we've made thus far, I think, is incredible. The Doge team has done incredible work. But the magnitude of the savings is proportionate to the support we get from Congress and from the executive branch of the government in general. So we're not the dictators, we are the advisors. But thus far, for advisors, the Doge team, to their credit, has made incredible progress.
You've talked about $4 billion a day being saved, but that won't get, and I think everyone can agree that combating waste and inefficiency in government is a very good thing. But if you add that up, it's not going to get to 2 trillion over the lifetime of Doge.
I'm sorry.
The 4 billion a day, if Doge is going to run till next July, is not going to get you to $2 trillion. But you still say it's your aim, so we'll take that as read.
There's what Doge. I mean, I feel you're somewhat trapped in the NPC dialogue tree of a traditional journalist. So it's difficult when I'm conversing with someone who's trapped in the dialogue tree of a conventional journalist, because it's like talking to a computer. Doge is an advisory group. We are doing the best we can as an advisory group. The progress made thus far as an advisory group is excellent. I don't think any advisory group has done better in the history of advisory groups of the government. Now, we do not make the laws, nor do we control the judiciary, nor do we control the executive branch. We are simply advisors. In that context, we are doing very well. Beyond that, we cannot take action beyond that, because we are not some sort of imperial dictator of the government. There are 3 branches of the government that are to some degree opposed to that level of cost savings. But nonetheless, let's not criticize whether there's 4 trillion, and instead look at the fact that 160 billion has been saved, and more will be saved too.
And as I said, I think everyone can agree that cutting waste and indeed fraud in any government and being responsible with taxpayers' money is a very good thing. So
yes.
I can see that you're proud of that work. I do want to ask you about US aid and the comments that Bill Gates made the other day, and I know that you called him.
Yeah, he's a huge liar.
I know you've said that already.
Dude, there has been no robo-taxi, no humanoid robots, nothing about Grok, nothing about XAI. Like, I'm not saying these questions aren't somewhat valuable, but when Elon says she's an NPC journalist, I mean, like, what are we trying to get from these questions? We're not talking about the future. We're talking about Bill Gates. Like, I don't know, dude. This really isn't just one of this is not the interview that I thought would happen at the Qatar Economic Forum.
Also,
and I'm just
who does Bill Gates think he is to make comments about the welfare of children, given that he frequented Jeffrey Epstein?
okay. Well,
Oh shit!
he said he regrets
I mean,
those,
it's not
and
exactly, I wouldn't trust that guy to babysit my kids.
he spent a lot of his own money on philanthropy around the world over the years. My question to you is, have you looked at the data to check if he might?
Holy freaking crap! And the journalist has no idea how to defend Bill Gates based on what he just said. My goodness, dude.
Be right that the cuts to USAID might cost millions of lives?
Yes. I'd like him to show us any evidence whatsoever that that is true. It's false. What we found with USAID cuts, and by the way, they haven't all been cut. The parts of USAID that were found to be even slightly useful were transferred to the State Department. So they've not been deleted. They've simply been transferred to the State Department. But many times over with USAID and other organizations, when they said, "Oh well, this is going to help, children, or it's going to help some disease eradication or something like that," and then when we ask for any evidence whatsoever, I say, "Well, please connect us with this group of children so we can talk to them and understand more about their issue." We get nothing. We don't even try to come up with a show orphan, meaning like this sort of like, well, can we at least see a few kids? Like, where are they? If they're in trouble, we'd like to talk to them and talk to their caregivers.
Okay, well,
and then we get nothing as a response, because it's what we find is an enormous amount of fraud and graft.
Okay, let me put this example to you.
Very little of it actually gets to the kids, if anything at all.
Okay, let me put this example to you, because you grew up in South Africa, so you'll know the impact of HIV/AIDS well. And this is why I asked about the data. The US led on international efforts to combat HIV/AIDS treatment, prevention, and there's an initiative called PEPFAR, which is credited with saving 26 million lives in the last 20 years. It was part of the foreign aid freeze. Then there was a limited waiver. Its services are disrupted. And UN aid says if permanently discontinued, there will be another 4 million AIDS-related deaths by 2029. So if you look at that example, which is backed up by data, in 2023, 630,000 people died of AIDS-related illnesses, then perhaps Bill Gates's figures are not wrong. Millions of lives could be lost.
First of all, the program, the AIDS medication program is continuing. So your fundamental premise is wrong. It is continuing. Now, do you have another example?
Elon, not in its entirety.
It is false.
Not in its entirety. There's a limited waiver, and UNAIDS have said that not all of the services that were previously funded by USAID are continuing. So that's why I put that example to you.
Okay, well, which ones aren't being funded? I'll fix it right now.
Okay, well, actually, they're all on the UNAIDS website, so you'll be able to see them. But mostly they are to do with prevention, and for example, the rollout of a drug called lenacapavir, which was hailed as one of the biggest breakthroughs against AIDS for many years, which came out last year. So if you are, perhaps, I'm sure UNAIDS would be delighted if you're able to look at that again.
Yes, but well, if in fact this is true, which I doubt it is, then we'll fix it.
Okay, fine. So finally, your political influence. I wondered whether you have decided yet how much you're going to spend on the upcoming midterms. Is it you spent a lot more money on the last US election than you envisaged when you were speaking here 3 years ago? Are you going to continue to spend at that kind of level on future elections?
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Okay. What about political influence beyond the US? How often do you speak to President Putin?
I don't speak to President Putin.
You've never spoken to President Putin?
I was on a video call with him once about 5 years ago.
Okay. That's the only.
But
That's
why
the
would you
only
think I
time.
speak to President Putin? You must. I get it.
Because
You
I've
believe
heard
the
you
legacy.
speak.
media.
Actually,
That's why.
I've heard you speak about it. For example, in your West Point speech, you said, "Oh, I challenged President Putin to was it an arm wrestle?" And I know the Wall Street Journal has reported your reported conversations.
yes.
If you're
Street
saying
Journal is-
they haven't
is-
happened other than once, I'll take that as read.
Is there a worse publication on the face of the earth than the Wall Street Journal? I wouldn't use that to line up my cage for parrot droppings. That newspaper is the worst newspaper in the world. If there's one newspaper that should be pro-capitalist, it's the one with Wall Street in the name, but it isn't. So I have the very lowest opinion of the Wall Street Journal. Absolute nonsense. And you clearly believe the tripe that you've written, that you've read in those papers.
I read very widely, and I'm putting these questions to you so that you have an opportunity to respond to them, which you are, and for which we're all grateful to hear your responses.
Yes.
Okay, we are out of time. So
you mentioned me challenging. I did so on the X platform. I challenged Vladimir Putin to
Understood.
single combat
Okay.
over the. But I didn't talk to him. That was a post on the X platform.
great.
That's
That's why I asked you, and you've clarified and explained. Thank you. That's why I was
Yeah.
asking whether you have had reported conversations, and you've said
the
you
reported
haven't other than a
conversations are
video
false.
call. Okay.
Typical legacy media lies.
Okay, listen, I actually thought I might give Grok the last word, because when I asked Grok what your hardest challenge is, it said the strain of managing multiple high-stake ventures amid financial, regulatory, and public relations crises. And I wondered whether you recognize that characterization and whether you do think that this is a pivotal year in your life.
Well, every year has been somewhat pivotal, and this one's no different. So, I mean, in terms of interesting things that hopefully are accomplished this year, getting Starship to be fully reusable, so that we catch both the booster and the ship, which will be the first fully reusable orbital rocket ever in history, which would be a profound breakthrough, as the essential breakthrough necessarily to make life multiplanetary and ultimately become a spacefaring civilization. We've got Neuralink, which has now helped 5 patients restore capability using the telepathy implant, where they're able to control a computer simply by thinking. We'll be doing our first patient to restore sight with our blind sight implant, which is either end of this year or early next. In fact, that first patient might be in UAE, since we have a relationship with UAE and the Cleveland Clinic there. I think what's running on the AI front, we are close to what you might call AGI, or digital superintelligence. I think we are seeing an explosion in digital superintelligence here. And then we've got at Tesla we'll be launching unsupervised autonomy, basically self-driving cars with no one in them, in Austin next month. So it's a big year for sure. Many other things in the works too.
Okay.
I'm a technologist first and foremost.
Elon Musk, thank you very much for joining us here at Qatar Economic Forum. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's one way to do an interview. Robinhood right here, 64.53. Tesla pretty much losing all of its gains from 354 down to 344. Look, here's my take. I know some people might disagree with it, but here's my take. And I think my take is pretty damn objective here. I don't think there's any political association attached to my take. I think it's honestly just common sense. You get Elon Musk for 30 minutes, and every single question is a headline that Bloomberg or whatever platform she's associated with is looking for to turn into clickbait. I mean, it's just more than obvious. As someone who is in the media, I am in the media. I'm not as big as Bloomberg or CNBC, but I make content. I understand how it can impact the world. The way you frame a narrative really does matter. Your accuracy on reporting a narrative really does matter. And I've messed up sometimes, right? Like I've made mistakes as well. And I try to be as truthful and as honest as I can when I'm reporting the news and the facts and bring other perspectives. This interview seemed like she did not care. The last question was the only time I heard Elon talk about XAI or Grok or Neuralink or all these phenomenal companies. Someone is literally walking, or I think someone tweeted the other day that they're able to use their mind to start making actions with their hands because their arms don't work anymore, and that's because of a Neuralink chip. Like, I would have really appreciated 15 minutes on how that is going to be at the intersection of AGI and what that could open up in terms of possibilities for people, not only from an economic perspective, but for humanity. And we got none of that. We got, hey, Elon, you tweeted a joke, by the way, of fighting Vladimir Putin. Does that mean you're having private phone conversations with him? Like, Edway, in what world do you take Elon's, hey, Vladimir Putin, let's box tweet? Which, I mean, like, I think the definition of being an NPC is not realizing that was a joke on X, and it was just he was having fun with it, to assume that, oh, Elon's having private conversations with Putin about setting up a way to box. I mean, I don't understand what we just saw. I really don't. Palantir right here down about 1%. PayPal basically flat. SoFi, why is SoFi down 2.4? I don't know why SoFi is down, but SoFi is down 2.4. And then Nvidia 132.78. It continues to be a covered call market, folks. It continues to be a covered call market. But in general, I thought that was a horrible interview. I thought that was a horrible interview. I don't know who planted those questions. I don't know how they thought of those questions. I mean, asking about Bill Gates, really asking about Doge. I mean, like, sure, you could ask one question about Doge, but she went for 15 minutes. And look, what is Elon going to say? I mean, at the end of the day, they're not going to save $2 trillion. It is what it is. Like, at some point, do you want him to literally admit, oh, the government is so bureaucratic, I can't cut $2 trillion? Like, you got to move on. You got to look to the future. You got to ask questions that actually matter and actually try to get some type of meaningful understanding of where the future of AI, where the world is going. She could have spent time asking ethical questions about AGI. What are the robots going to be like in our homes? Could the robots potentially turn into things that we have to really worry about? Like, these are the questions I think people care about. Self-driving, the regulations, that stuff people care about. Uber drivers losing their jobs due to autonomous vehicles. That's a hard question. Like, how is Elon going to answer that? But it's a hard question that doesn't have to do with accusing him of being on FaceTime with Vladimir Putin. So I don't know, dude. My personal thoughts on the interview were that I don't get why those questions were that relevant, and I think they were purely made for clickbait. Now, Elon's going to be live again with CNBC at 2 p.m. At 2 p.m. with David Faber, Elon's going to be live again. Hopefully we get some decent questions about, Tesla and technology. But this is just one of those things that the older I grow, the more I realize what are the influences that are shaping the way we consume media. And the older you get, you start to realize that a lot of these journalists, they're not independent. I don't have any advertisers. I don't have any pharmaceutical companies. I don't have any agenda. I'm not paid by any Tesla short firms. I'm not paid by Ford and GM, so I'm not influenced to make Tesla look bad because I'm taking legacy auto money. The beauty of being independent is you're not going to make that much money, but you're going to actually have a soul. And the hard part about being part of legacy media is that if you choose to kind of go against the grain of your corporation, they will fire you. They will say, get out of here. We'll get another NPC to do our bidding. And the fun part is you'll get paid millions of dollars a year, but in return for those millions of dollars a year, you will have to sell your soul. And so from that perspective, I think that was what that interview looked like. It was just not an interview that was meaningful towards the overall Tesla story. Tesla right here, 343. That's basically up about 0.5%, kind of flat on the day after being up at 354. Adobe, 414. This stock was 400 last week. So this one getting some love. It was at 370 a couple weeks ago. This one getting some momentum, down about 1.42% of the day. SoFi, I don't know why SoFi is down 2.29%, but it is down. Google, 166. That is red again on the day. The entire market kind of going red. Grab right there at $5. The S&P 500, 592. That is also down about 0.36% as well. That is creating some pain right here. It's paying millions of dollars per week by Saratoga. Yes, exactly. That's I drank some Saratoga this morning. That's why we're red. S&P 592. So Google's event is coming up. Maybe the street is kind of fading Google until they get some evidence that Sundar is not going to let this company die. in a couple hours. So that could be the reason why Google's going red along with the broader market. NVIDIA, I don't know why the semis are red. I'm still confused unless it's just algos. All of big tech is red. The semis are red. Tesla goes red. Kathy Wood, again, she bought about 197,000 shares of TSM. TSM getting no love from that either. But pretty much everything going red on the day. Most investors share Moody's U.S. deficit worries from a Deutsche Bank poll. Okay, I would be curious to see how many people did they poll. I'm kind of triggered by Mish only talking about 200 people. I want to know the sample size now. But number two, it's like, look, I'm also concerned about what Moody's said. I'm not saying Moody's didn't say anything that mattered in regards to our deficit. I just think from a stock market perspective, you don't sell your NVIDIA because of Moody's. Because in 2011, if you sold your whatever because of Moody's when they downgraded us, you missed out on amazing gains. So I just don't think it makes a ton of sense to use that as a barometer for selling stock per se. But nonetheless, yes, we do have a deficit problem, and that is an issue. Okay, NVIDIA down 192. It's down about 2.2. I don't think Trump is live right now. Let me see. He's going to go live at 3 p.m. for some signing of something. Is he live right now? There's a stream of him being live in a bit. I'll switch to him if he goes live, but I don't see him live right now. And so we'll switch that if he's there. Let's get an update from Congress and the bill that he's trying to get passed as well from this morning. And then we'll keep going from there. Again, Google, big event in a couple hours. And then we got Elon at 2 p.m., which is going to be the middle of the Google event. So I'll see if I can get that interview. And then we have Trump at 3 p.m. going live later today as well.
Interesting comments. And, this Caroline Levitt yesterday, Emily, in the briefing, arguing that the bill doesn't add to the deficit where some of the math analysis argues otherwise.
I mean, Carl, we could definitely get into that math analysis, but I think kind of the big thing now is, can Trump get Republicans united behind his bill this week? And that is Trump's message, telling Republicans basically get on board or else. He has accused several of them of grandstanding. He says that they need to work together and get this done. And his message to them is saying, look, if you don't pass this bill, if we don't do something, taxes on Americans are going to be going up at the end of the year. Look at what he just told reporters before he entered the meeting.
So this is the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, or you'll get a 68% tax increase. And if that happens, I mean, what Republican could vote for that to happen? Because there wouldn't be a Republican much longer. They would be knocked out so fast.
Now, we should clarify that the 68%, that's a little higher than what the actual tax increase on Americans would be should this 2017 bill expire, which is what Republicans are trying to prevent. Trump also gave some comments on that state and local deduction. That's been another big sticking point for Republicans on the Hill as they figure out this bill. But what Trump basically came out and said is that, look, this is primarily going to benefit Democratic governors. He didn't really note his own Republican members from high tax states. And this is a bit of a reversal from what we saw Trump talk about on the campaign trail. He also specifically called out Thomas Massie, a congressman from Kentucky, who has said that he plans to vote against this bill, has voted against bills in the past. Trump again accused him of grandstanding and said that he should be voted out of office. You can already see Trump is starting to pick out members, to call them out directly, and to put the pressure on. The Republicans' goal for leadership is to get this bill passed in the House this week. They will need that so the Senate can have all of June to do its work and then hopefully get this passed at some point in July.
Okay, so that's why Trump is at Congress. He's not live right now, but he's in Capitol Hill trying to discuss getting this passed. As the reporter said right there, it needs to get passed by this week for the month of June for it to meaningfully get architected through reconciliation. And then eventually by July or August, they want to get that bill into law. Robinhood right here, 64.41 on a relatively red day across the market. Robinhood continues to be green, getting some momentum right there. Tesla trying to hold on to 345, then Palantir basically flat on the day at 126 currently right now. So those are some of the updates we have in terms of the big, beautiful bill being passed as we go further into the day. NVIDIA right here, 133.33. Some of you guys are saying I have Tesla shares, therefore I'm biased. I think that's a silly argument, dude. I've been critical of Tesla for years. I remember, dude, I was thinking about this because they released the Optimus video the other day. I remember 4 months ago, when they released the Optimus Kim Kardashian stuff in January. I mean, you can find the clip. I was on the market open saying this is pretty stupid. You got other humanoid startups actually showing real stuff, and Tesla's taking stupid pictures with Kim Kardashian. This is not helpful for shareholders or for Optimus. And so I think owning Tesla shares has zero relevance on being able to figure out, was that interview a good interview or not? I'm not saying the questions didn't deserve to be asked to some extent, but the entire 30 minutes, and if you don't believe me, watch it again, there was not a single question about robotaxis, Optimus, the future of AI, the ethical implications, what it means for jobs. Everything was rooted in Elon's political affiliations, his association with Trump and Doge. And so I think I've been very critical of Tesla. I've literally said for the past 5 days, Doge isn't doing shit. Now, if I was in front of Elon, I would give him the respect for trying, because I actually respect people who try. Although I think Doge is not really going to make a dent in our deficit, I respect someone for at least getting rid of 150 billion of waste and fraud. Like, I can admit, hey, that's a good thing, even if it's not really going to do anything for the structural problems in our economy. But that reporter just dismissed it completely as if it did nothing, as if it was just like garbage. And it's like, no, it's not going to solve the deficit, but you don't tell the guy to his face that's actually trying to solve some of the struggle, who's the one person in history we've had tried to go up against the bureaucracy and take away some of the waste and fraud. Oh, you've done nothing. Or, hey, you said 2 trillion, only 150 billion has happened. Or, hey, that's a fair question. You could ask that, but then move on. Like, she spent 20 minutes trying to elongate the idea that he's not going to be able to save 2 trillion. It's like, we know, we got it. Like, he shoots for the stars and lands on the moon. And it doesn't always work out where you get to the stars, but it is what it is. You got to move on to the next question. So I don't know, dude. I don't think me owning Tesla has anything to do with the fact that I just thought that interview was really not the best interview. And I think Elon's an easy clickbait target to be able to get headlines off of, which is why I think those questions were the way they are. Again, you got to remember, the media makes their money off clickbait. They make their money off monetizing attention. And the juicier the headline, the better the chance they have of being able to get clicks. At least legacy media, right? From that perspective, you got to have really, really juicy headlines to get people interested. And unfortunately, they use Elon as the punching bag to get those juicy headlines. Bitcoin right here, 104.8. So Bitcoin down from 107 last night. Robinhood, remember the headline we talked about yesterday? Robinhood a little close to 65 about the real world asset authentication. I think that's hitting the business wires right now. And I think that's what's moving the stock right here. It looks like I'm seeing a headline that says Robinhood unlocking $30 trillion market with submitting letter to SEC about RWA, which is real world authentication. We covered that yesterday. 65 resistance on Hood. Let me check right here. 65 is 45,000 shares. 45,000 shares. I think we can crack through. If that headline is going mainstream right now, maybe that's the headline that got the market moving yesterday, even if it wasn't like a headline that went across the entire business wire. But if you're on Twitter, you saw a bunch of people tweet about it. You could tell that could have been a reason for it to pump. That right there, 10 cents away from hitting 65. We haven't seen 65 since February. So it's been a minute since we've seen 65. By the way, D-Wave, QBTS, congrats, up 27% on the day. Market loves the new cloud deal they got in the quantum space. That one absolutely moving. Market cap on this bad boy is 4.8 billion. It's a bit expensive given its earnings, but you're not buying it for earnings. You're buying it for quantum potential. And let's just say Skrelly's short is not really working out right now on the quantum names. Palantir right here, 126.25. We'll talk about the new Palantir deal in a second because we haven't had a chance to talk about that yet. NVIDIA, 133. Rocket Lab, 25.62. And then Hoodie, 12 cents away from touching 65 once again, which will be very exciting to see it get there. Yeah, I wonder what Elon's going to talk about at 2 p.m. David Faber, look, I like him, but last time he had an interview with Elon, he also went for kind of the clickbaity type of stuff. So maybe they talk about tech, maybe they don't, but we're going to see what happens. There she goes, 65 on Hoodie, and she broke through. Wow. She broke through that. Dude, that wasn't even a fight. Broke through 49,000 shares, now 65.10. Look at that, dude. Holy crap. It's a nice day to own a little bit of Hood right here. 65.10 on Hoodie. There you go. Elon just tweeted about the Wall Street Journal. He said, congrats, Wall Street Journal, on your new name of BSJ. BS is more accurate. All right. So that's Elon's response to the Wall Street Journal. So There you go. And again, to his defense, dude, the Wall Street Journal has had some pretty aggressive hit pieces on Elon that, like, no human would want to deal with that type of stuff in real life. Talking about his sex life, his his personal life, his relationships, all this, it gets pretty deep. I'm not saying none of that reporting is not relevant at all to the Tesla story and him as a CEO, but the way it's framed, the way they architected, the freaking he's leaving Tesla 3 weeks ago. Remember that headline that came out that he's leaving Tesla and they spoke to board members and that they're looking for a new CEO? That didn't happen. That wasn't real. And even if there was a hint of truth to it, it wasn't enough to make it a frontline story because obviously Elon's not leaving Tesla. So, I mean, if you were someone who had constant negative articles written about you every other day, especially by a media publication that has the voice of Wall Street, you would not be happy. You would definitely not be happy right there. Robinhood 65.14. She's breaking out. And D-Wave as well, 17. Both of these bad boys having some love today. Look at that, 29% on D-Wave. Let me check the short float on D-Wave and Hood. I think the short float on D-Wave is like above 5%. Never mind. It is 20.4%. We talk about HIMS getting a squeeze. If retail really wants to get excited about quantum and D-Wave is their choice to get there, that might be the way they go. Robinhood right here, their short float is less than 4%. So there's not really going to be a squeeze on Hoodie. But on D-Wave, I mean, if I were to guess, it looks like a short squeeze is happening right now. Up 30%. Up 30% right there on D-Wave currently right now. Robinhood 65. Let's check resistance for 66 on Hoodie. And again, I think it's because of this real world authentication or real world asset headline that's now starting to hit the business wires. 24,000 shares. 24,000 shares. At 66 for Robinhood. Looks like that's what we were seeing. Yeah, there you go right there. See, these are the headlines. You see all the big accounts tweeting them right now. Robinhood submits RWA tokenization. That happened yesterday, but none of the big headlines, none of the big accounts or Bloomberg or CNBC actually reported it. Maybe that's why the stock ran up because people knew that headline was coming. And there you go. The headline is live today. And Robinhood up another 1.3% after being up 4% yesterday, based on what we had. It feels like 70 is kind of inevitable for Hood, to be honest. It's not like it's going to happen overnight, but I mean, for her to go back to 30 and now come all the way back to basically all-time highs, we know Q2 is going to be a banger. I mean, as long as June is not horrible, and the crypto volumes, we talked about this on the Tech Bro Weekly podcast last night. Crypto volumes are back to where they were back in the second half of January, which is not like the all-time highs, but it's really good for Hood. Like really good for Hood. And as long as they continue to increase their take rate a little bit, crypto is going to be a massive catalyst for them to be able to get some momentum. I bet right here, 59.65, that's down about 0.85%. HIMS is flat on the day, down 0.5%. Pfizer got a deal with another company yesterday, along with Moderna. And that's why Pfizer is getting a little bit of love right here, up 2.3%. Pfizer does have a 7% divvy, and it's trading at basically 11-year lows. So if you take a chance on Pfizer, you do get paid for taking that chance, and maybe you're buying it at the bottom. But Pfizer right here is up 2.3%. And then BABA, 124.47. That is green. Where's UNH? So UNH was at 310 yesterday. UNH is at 315. So still down on the day. But it is up from that 249 level. Again, a lot of people making some nice buy the dip money from UNH. Nebius is back up 6.5. Dude, this went up 5%, went down 2%, went up 3%, went down 4%, and now it's back up 6.7%. The earnings were good enough for I think the street to justify a 6% move. It just was bouncing around all morning. But there it is. $40 on Nebius currently right now. Which is nice to see. Amit, do you recommend covered calls with Palantir that have a 97% profit with a consistent cash flow? Yeah, I don't hate that, dude. Like my Palantir 140s, they're up like, let me just show you guys so you guys can see. For those that don't know what a covered call looks like, this will give you a shot of seeing it. So I wrote these covered calls back when Palantir was at 133 because I didn't think it would get to 140 by May 23rd. I wrote them and I got an average of $2.06. This is what they currently look like. 5 contracts. I got $2.06 a contract. That's $206. They're up 83%, which means I could close them out right now. I could give back 165 and pocket the 865 because I have to buy the contract to close it. The contract is worth 33 cents, which means it lost 80% of its value. And that's good because somebody who bought the 140 call thought that Palantir would get to 140 by Friday. I took the opposite of that trade. I said, no. I said, look, I love Palantir. I'm bullish Palantir. I've been covering Palantir for 5 years. I think I know the company better than a lot of people. I don't think it gets to 140 by next Friday. Like, I don't know what happens. And now I could be wrong. We got 4 days left. Maybe it gets to 140. But if I'm not wrong, like, it kind of felt like taking money from a baby. Like, it just like, it was easy, dude. You know, so now if I did a 135 call, that would have been more premium, but that would have been scary because Palantir was at 133. I don't want to take that much risk. So if your deltas are like 0.15 to 0.10, which is the scale at which you determine the probability of getting assigned. Usually people do 0.3 deltas, but that's still kind of risky in a bullish market, which we're in a bullish market. If you go way below that, even if you get a small amount of premium, but you have thousands of shares, an extra $400 or $500 a week, like, who wouldn't want that, right? Especially when the stock is already at all-time highs. Robinhood right here, 65.11. So that is one way you can make income off your shares, and I don't think it's the worst strategy in the world. Can you talk about Boeing? Well, the main thing to talk about Boeing is that they got that big jet deal last week with Qatar, 208 on Boeing. Their stock, they've had a lot of issues over the past year, especially with worker strikes. They're up 21%. So Boeing has done fine. I think you buy Boeing if you believe that Qatar deal actually becomes true, because they haven't actually paid them the $200 billion. But if you believe that they will get that money and acquire more jets, it's not the worst thesis, but it has kind of been priced in, right? The stock's already moved from that, and it's outperforming a lot of the Mag 7 this year. So I don't know if it's the most attractive buy like it was at 170, but obviously it's been getting some momentum based on the Saudi deals and the Qatar deals that they got last week. Have you covered Datadog? So this is a stock I have to look more into. Datadog is one of those SaaS players. Their earnings have not been amazing, so they haven't really made the radar. I think they have earnings coming up next week, the week after this week, along with the NVIDIAs of the world. I don't think it's this week, but they never really like beat on earnings to some dramatic level where people would be like, oh, Datadog, that's a software player I got to look at. Their earnings are relatively, flat or mediocre. So it's another company I want to look at in the software space. Obviously they're doing some AI stuff. ServiceNow is a little bit more attractive than Datadog outside of like the Palantirs and Salesforces of the world. But this is one that I want to have on the list and go a little bit more deeper on. They just haven't had one of those types of quarters where you're like, holy crap, like, Datadog is something to pay attention to. Robinhood right here, 64.68, getting rejected at 65.15, but that one's down a little bit right now. Why is QBTS up 30%? I think it's getting squeezed right here. They did get a quantum deal this morning. We'll talk about Palantir in a second, or a cloud computing deal, but that was enough to get the market interested. Here's if I'm not wrong, this is the headline. D-Wave announced the general availability of its Advantage 2 quantum computing system, an annealing quantum computer capable of solving computational complex problems beyond the reach of classical computers. Featuring D-Wave's most advanced quantum processor to date, the Advantage 2 system is commercial grade and built to address real-world use cases in areas such as optimization, material simulation, and AI. That, along with the cloud deal this morning. Yeah, as Quantest says. Quantest, by the way, for those that don't know her channel, you can click on her name and get to her channel. She has been covering D-Wave since it was like $4. So she's been following the story for a very long time. And I believe she's made some videos on it on her channel as well, for those that want more info. And Tess, you can link your channel in the chat as well. I'll highlight it. For those that are confused, I would watch her videos because she's been covering this pretty in depth. But the availability of this new hardware, along with the short float, along with that cloud deal, along with general quantum momentum based on what Jensen said a couple of days ago, I mean, that's a perfect recipe. And Martin Shkreli shorting it. I mean, you got a lot of people that just don't like him and they want to stick it to him. So there you go. 27% on the day. It's possible because of that. So there you go. Ryan says, can we all just sell 1 billion contracts of NVIDIA strike at 300 expiring this Friday, collect the premium, and then meet up in Hawaii? We could. Unfortunately, we don't have 1 billion contracts of NVIDIA, but maybe one day. But yeah, theoretically, dude. But like if you're getting close to retirement, right? And you have 10,000 shares of Meta, right? Because you invested in Meta when you were I don't know, 45 and now you're 65 and you know, you have your shares of Meta and you don't want to sell them. Like, and your average is $20 or something. You can sell 100 contracts a week at different levels, collect that income. And inevitably you want to sell your Meta, right? If you're close to retirement, like, or, you know, you have your $20 average, you want to recognize that gain eventually. But if you can keep selling out of the money calls and force the market to go higher in order for your shares to get called away, that's not horrible. That's not a horrible strategy at all. Tanner was talking about this last night. Tanner's getting into covered calls as well. Tanner sold his Tesla and he put it into NVIDIA. And he even admitted, if I wrote a covered call on Tesla, I think he sold at 250, he wrote a covered call at 270. Yeah, Tesla's at 350. Okay, he missed out on that extra money in between 270 and 350, but he at least would have gotten in the extra $20 of capital appreciation and the premium from writing that covered call and forcing the market to take his shares away from him versus willingly just selling it on the open market. And so I think there are a lot of strategies to navigate covered calls as even an exit strategy on your position. Okay, Palantir. Let's talk about the new Palantir partnership that they had today. Here we go. Palantir and Divergent Technologies announced a strategic partnership to provide access to Divergent's leading advanced manufacturing capabilities via Palantir's leading industry software platform, bringing digitally manufactured parts to Warp Speed and Foundry. So we have a new Warp Speed partnership. The partnership provides Palantir's defense and commercial customers with seamless Divergent digital manufacturing capabilities and production environments with access to DAPS. Within Palantir's software, customers will be able to rapidly identify an emerging supply chain vulnerabilities and then directly address them through on-demand manufacturing of critical parts by Divergent. President at Divergent says, by providing access to Divergent's next generation manufacturing directly with Palantir's industry leading software, our customers can identify and solve production shortages and new product developments on unmatched timelines. The partnership centers on effectively distributing high impact capability. We are bringing the power of DAPS to Palantir's global customer base. Shyam Sankar, CTO, writes, Divergent is a trailblazer in the new industrial revolution that is sweeping the US. The Divergent adaptive production system is a mind-bending example of what's possible when the world's most advanced software fuses with the world's most advanced manufacturing. We are proud to support Divergent's innovative operations with Warp Speed as it scales in ambition and impact. The takeaway from this is pretty simple. Palantir is partnering with some of the leading cutting-edge institutions on the planet, and their software is seen as the best software in the world. They are trying to find the best in class of other verticals, in this case, manufacturing systems, and they're trying to integrate and be able to build operating systems that can be sold to the enterprise versus just remedial business development partnerships that you see with your local SaaS providers. And so from that perspective, stock's down 0.36. Obviously, the stock is very elevated. So I think even holding the 100s is very good for Palantir. But the more and more partnerships we see like that, the more and more they're able to expand Warp Speed. And in a nutshell, what is Warp Speed? It's reindustrializing manufacturing. So Shyam's big vision of this is, hey, American manufacturing, which by the way is consistent with Trump's vision, can we bring that back? And can we build the software to be able to enable American manufacturing at scale? Because we can't compete in terms of cost of labor. China's going to beat us there. Vietnam's going to beat us there. Thailand's going to beat us there. But in terms of optimizing our factories to become digital native smart factories, like what they're doing with Panasonic in Sparks, Nevada, with the Tesla battery manufacturer, they can reindustrialize American manufacturing in the United States and probably print a decent chunk of revenue from that as becoming that go-to operating system. So from that perspective, I think it's very, very bullish. And the more and more deals we get like that, the better it is for Palantir. U.S. Senate to vote this week on bill to repeal legal authority allowing California to ban gasoline-only vehicles in 2035. Okay, so that would be bearish Tesla, obviously, because if we ban gas vehicles by 2035, Tesla tends to be one of the major beneficiaries of that because you legally in California have to buy an EV. Granted, when I saw this bill come out a year ago, it was kind of weird, bro. Like, as much as I agree that we need more electric vehicles, I don't know if you would want to ban people from buying ICE vehicles. Like, first of all, I don't know what that does to GM and Ford. I don't think they're going to be able to completely change their supply chains to go EV in the next 10 years. Like, I think that's not going to be practical. And then number two, it's just like, you're kind of taking away consumer choice at an aggressive level. Like, consumers now have to pick an EV, So I don't know. I never fully loved that concept of the bill. But if it does get repealed, then not really the most bullish for Tesla, because obviously Tesla would benefit from it massively if they were able to completely get rid of ICE vehicles in California. The market will decide. EV will win given time. Yeah, I agree. Let the market decide. If people want to buy a gas car, then they should have the right to do that. Teslas and EVs, whatever, they just have to be better enough to get people to not buy that. But I think it's kind of weird to, force people to buy it the way that the government wants them to buy it. So I think that would be repealed. I do think that would be repealed. And it's just a question of when. Okay, we got Palantir's Mike Gallagher on CNBC. Let's see what he has to say and get his thoughts on kind of what's going on right here. Do we have any breaking news outside of that? Actually, here, let's get an update from Washington, and then we'll go to what Gallagher was saying.
For the good, for raising money. Thank you for charity. Contessa Brewer at BTIG. Up next, Wolf Research's head of U.S. policy on what the uncertainty around the budget bill means for investors. Plus, Home Depot.
Okay, so we'll get an update soon on what's going on with investors. Here's Mike Gallagher from Palantir today.
New Harmony OS is on every device globally. So whether that's export controls, whether that's sanctions, something we learned in Trump 1.0 is that we need to actually enforce the export controls we put in place. But we also learned that that's not enough, right? It's not enough to go around the world and just say, Huawei's bad, Huawei's scary. You need an alternative. We don't have an alternative that can effectively compete with Huawei, which is why we need to forge trade deals with our closest allies. We need to get them to Finlandize in our direction. So a lot of work to be done.
Okay, but complicated. So
yes.
Here we are, not necessarily making friends with our friends, right? We have a lot of allies where we are now saying, hey, you want to be my friend? You got to pay us to be my friend, right? And that, some people are arguing, is going to send parts of Europe, parts of Africa, parts of other parts of the world, India even, into the arms of China and Huawei.
Well, here's the good news. I think across the world, people still want to be the friend of the United States of America. And China, the Chinese Communist Party, is not interested in having allies. They want vassal states that they can control. So we still have an enormous advantage. To your point, I do think it would be wise for us to start striking bilateral gold standard trade agreements, right? We have a huge opportunity, building off the momentum the president has from his Gulf trip, to build off the Abraham Accords and add a technological component to that. I would like to see a trade deal with Japan reached in the near future. And then we can start to build out from there. No one, I think, is saying a big multilateral trade agreement is in the offing, but something akin to a regional digital trade agreement in the Indo-Pacific, building off former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's vision of data-free flow with trust, I think would redound to our advantage. So we still have a better hand. We just have to play it well on the world stage.
And you think that we can effectively block Huawei from getting on all of the different services that exist around the world, because they're basically offering it for free?
I think if the United States Congress and the United States President work in tandem, I was happy to see my former committee, the Select Committee, is starting to investigate the Harmony OS system. I think if we resource our export control enforcement, which is why I was heartened to see that even in the era of Doge, the president is proposing a 50% increase to Commerce's export control arm, BIS. I think we actually can learn from the lessons of the last time we tried to take on Huawei and ZTE and be more effective this time.
Can I just ask one related question?
Real quick, guys, we got a headline coming out of Europe. And by the way, Trump's going to be talking about the Golden Dome at 3 p.m. There's a source saying that Trump will be talking about the Golden Dome, which potentially includes Palantir, SpaceX, Anduril, et cetera, at 3 p.m. Wow. Bond sales out of Europe have topped €1 trillion at record pace. This means demand for European bonds is massive. It is the quickest that Europe has been able to sell $1 trillion worth of bonds based on this headline coming in right now in regards to all the different countries that are part of Europe selling their bonds when you aggregate that data together. The 10-year spiking a little bit. One could make the assumption that potentially people are selling U.S. bonds to buy European bonds. And if this is accurate, that they just have their fastest pace of selling €1 trillion worth of bonds, which is about 1.1 trillion USD. Yeah, I mean, maybe Moody's got some people to say, I'm going to go buy German debt or Swedish debt over United States debt. But that's the headline we got right now out of Europe.
Do you think that every company in China is an arm of the Chinese government?
I think there is no such thing as a free market company in China. By law, every company in China is beholden to the Chinese Communist Party. Now, that's not to say there aren't people and companies in China that would like to be free from the yoke of the Chinese Communist Party. That's not to say there isn't true innovation happening in China, but the system is a Marxist, Leninist, techno-totalitarian system. Yes.
Okay, so then what do you think of the American businesses that are doing business in China? So what do you think, and Elon Musk is going to be interviewed later today, what do you think of Elon Musk, given his relationship with the president, but the big business that Tesla has in China? Do you believe that he is therefore under the thumb of China? Do you believe that Tim Cook is under the thumb of China?
What I've been saying for a decade is that it is going to be increasingly difficult to do business in China and maintain presence in China. For all the talk about decoupling, whether we're decoupling, selective decoupling, the fact is that Xi Jinping is attempting to decouple from us. And American businesses that don't understand that risk and take steps to diversify their supply chain, I fear are going to get caught in the supply chain. The other component of this is that in order to
the ones that are
that don't model the risk are going to get caught in the decoupling going on. Excuse me. The other thing I would say is that one thing that completely undermines our deterrent posture, even from a conventional military perspective, is our dependency on China economically, right? So what is China threatening to do in response to us prohibiting the Huawei Ascend 910 B, C, and D chips? They're threatening to weaponize their dominance in rare earth and critical minerals in order to bring us to our knees. We need to wean ourselves off of that dependency so that they cannot threaten us and hold us hostage in that way. And similarly, if they were to take Taiwan, as Xi Jinping continues to threaten to do, they would be able to hold the rest of the world completely hostage economically.
Is your view that they're going to at this point? What's your base case on taking Taiwan, let's say, during this administration?
My view, informed by what we've seen in Ukraine in recent years, is that if a dictator tells you they're going to do a thing, even if that thing seems outlandish from a Western perspective, we should take it pretty damn seriously.
By the way, if anyone has seen the 60 Minutes episode with the Taiwanese prime minister, they did this about a year and a half ago. He specifically said it is not when, or it is not if, it is when China will invade us. So it's not just the West taking it seriously. Taiwan genuinely believes they will be invaded by China eventually. And, you know, obviously we're going to have to protect them if that happens. And so I think the United States definitely does need to take that seriously.
Okay. And let's say they do it.
Yes.
During this administration, next 3 years, what do you believe that this administration does?
Well, first, I do believe this administration is committed to preventing that from happening. I think it's a bipartisan position to say it would be nice not to go to war with China. We should move heaven and earth to deter a war with China. And we can do it if we actually act with a sense of urgency, leveraging autonomous systems, leveraging advanced technology and things like that. I do think there is one of the missing pieces of our strategy right now is breaking down all the barriers to technological and military collaboration with our key allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific so that we have a joint deterrent posture, not just a U.S. deterrent posture.
That sounds like a fantasy idea.
I don't think it's a fantasy idea. And I think
what happened to get us there? Because it seems like we are a long way from that right now.
One of the for example, we've been talking for years about we need to turn Taiwan into a porcupine, right? Well, we have, and we've been encouraging our friends in Taiwan to spend more on defense. Our encouragement would be stronger if we were, for example, to clear the $20 billion backlog of foreign military sales items that we've approved but have yet to be delivered to Taiwan. That's absolutely something
China in a
we
very
could.
Big way. What would be the repercussions from China if we do that?
Listen, the lesson of dealing with Marxist-Leninist regimes, the lesson of all of Solzhenitsyn's writings is that, you know, you need to put steel in their path if you want them to stop. The fundamental paradox of Marxist-Leninist regimes is that they get more aggressive the more accommodating you are to them. So the only thing that will convince Xi Jinping to reverse course is if he concludes that his lifelong ambition, i.e. taking Taiwan, is in fact unachievable because his military isn't ready and he's scared of our military.
And if
our deterrence rests on our ability to scare him.
If that blows up the détente that we have right now when it comes to trade, is it worth it?
I actually think it enhances our ability to sit across from the table with Xi Jinping and talk about economic and technological issues. You can't silo these things, right? In fact, like a credible military deterrent gives life to our soft power, gives life to all of our diplomacy. If you don't have that fundamental foundation, you're not going to be able to strike a trade deal that's worth anything.
Look, I would tend to agree. I don't think we can take China as a joke. And I definitely, given what happened with Russia and Ukraine, we can't take the idea, Robin it back to 65. We can't take the idea lightly that a dictatorship would one day want to intervene and continue to exert their power on a vulnerable nation that does not have the same type of military strength to protect their sovereignty. I don't even think it's political to say that. I don't think it's a fantasy to say, hey, we need to really make sure that if things happen, we are prepared to be able to deal with it. Because again, when you look at the history of some of these dictatorships and how they've governed themselves, and one of the only reasons they've kind of been kept at bay for the past 40 years is because of a lot of the economic mobility and the fact that if they invade, then we won't do trade with them and then their economy will go to shit. But once they stop caring about that, like Putin did in 2022, they just want power. And so I definitely am more on the side of, and I don't think it's fear mongering either, dude. Like, I think it's a very elementary take to say it's fear mongering. Like, we've seen what has happened historically. Literally 2022, we have the evidence of what happens when a dictator wants massive amounts of power. And by the way, that dictator has nukes. China, they've got their own red button that they can press. It's something I don't think we can take lightly. And one of the reasons I think that Jensen is setting up a headquarters in Taiwan, which even Jose wasn't fully sure why he's doing it, I kind of think there is a world in which him and Trump are collaborating, or him in the White House, on this idea of, hey, we have to protect Taiwan for the AI revolution. If we don't have any Taiwan semiconductor chips, we have no AI revolution. China, if they want our chips, they need to make sure they don't invade Taiwan. What's one of the best ways to make sure they definitely don't do it? NVIDIA having a headquarters there and them ruining any potential chance of having a relationship with NVIDIA if they were to invade. Maybe there is one argument where you could frame it that way, because otherwise I don't know why they set up a headquarters in Taiwan. Otherwise, outside of them just wanting to be closer to one of their biggest suppliers, it seems like maybe there's a geopolitical tactic going on right there. All right, hoodie 64.79 cannot hold above 65. Palantir goes green 126.64, which is nice to see. Broadcom and all the semis are red on the day. Again, it continues to be a covered call market. Continues to be a covered call market. If you had 135s or 137s on NVIDIA, we got 3 days left of the week, but you're not fully underwater, even if NVIDIA was moving above 135 yesterday. Like, a lot of these names are not rocket ships. They are moving with momentum, but they're not 2024 where it's up 1% every other day. It's a little bit tougher of an environment for them to do that. So those calls aren't doing that horrible. Bitcoin right here, 100.906. Okay, let's cover the grab thing real quick. There is a protest going on in Indonesia, which is a big part of the grab market. Mass ride-hailing protests are happening in Indonesia right now. 25,000 protesters. Ride-hailing drivers are demanding better pay, fairer working conditions, and legal protections. The strikes are expected to happen for 24 hours. Drivers will turn off their apps, so no revenue for the next 24 hours for Grab from that perspective in Indonesia. And it looks like they're looking for better take rates from the platforms. Here's what Gab wrote on Twitter. He's a guy who covers this market extensively. He says, overall, I think this is a small concern for shareholders for these businesses. Strikes have always happened, often egged on by unions. This will likely be resolved by assurances provided by the government and some promises by the ride-hailing businesses, and things will go back to normal. A 24-hour strike will have no negligible impact to Grab, GoTo, or C Limited. There is some room for concern in the effects this could have on a merger talk between Grab and GoTo, but I believe the Indonesian government's mind has likely already been made up. So hopefully a nothing burger. I do think the Indonesian government has made up their mind, and they're allowing Grab to buy GoTo. Like, GoTo's losing too much money. Their stock's down 80%. The Indonesian government, I'm sure they want a big technology company they can point to as like the crown jewel, but if it's not making money, it's not making any sense or sense. And from that perspective, it just makes more sense for Grab to be able to take over that business. So I do think Grab will inevitably buy them. It might take a couple months, or maybe more than a couple months, for it to play out. But Grab right here down 1.28%. It does feel inevitable. And based on all the hints we've been getting, I think that's why the stock's been kind of stuck at $5. The street is really waiting for that news to come through. But that is one of the reasons why Grab is down currently right now. Nebis 10%. There she goes. If you own this one, congrats. 9.3. We had Sam come on the channel, talk about it at 34 last week. Now it's at 41. Nice little move we're seeing on the stock right here. And yeah, look, they're going to win. They're going to be a potential beneficiary of data centers and AI. And that means the whole marketplace is really getting a lot of these derivative companies. Dude, they're planning to do $1 billion in revenue by the end of the year. Like, this is not Nvidia. This is a $9 billion company with half of their market cap trading in cash, doing about $1 billion in revenue in one of the fastest growing industries, which is data center compute infrastructure for AI. So it is nice to see some of that momentum on this one. Benny says, Amit, I was in Vietnam for 2 weeks and got back on Friday. I used Grab every day. However, they were not the most common use of taxi service there. Yeah, that makes sense. So Grab is a good presence in Vietnam, but there are a lot of competitors. This is the reason I hope they can buy GoTo, because although Grab, I think, has the most amount of market share across Southeast Asia, in all these little regions, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, obviously Indonesia, there are competitors. And these competitors nuke Grab's margins. And Grab has to spend a lot of money on incentives to get people to be able to use their product and not use the other guys. So once they can consolidate, which is inevitable, Uber's done this, DoorDash has done this, all these companies across the world, Lyft, they just bought a company for $700 million in the UK. Like, you've got to consolidate this market and be able to allow margins to actually flourish. And given that, 30% of the stock is traded in cash and that they didn't buy back a single share, I think they're getting ready for that consolidation. And that doesn't mean the stock has to go up as soon as they buy GoTo, but it does mean that we're looking at 30-40% revenue growth and 50 to 60% EPS growth over the next couple of years if they end up taking out their biggest competitor. So I don't expect stock to go parabolic when they buy them, but I do expect earnings to start going parabolic within like 2 or 3 quarters after, and that should get the stock really in the right direction, which is what would be exciting to see for Grab. Okay, so that's what we got right now. Amit, what's the one stock you would buy and hold for the next 10 years? I think the chat can answer this as well. Obviously, my first answer would be Palantir. My second answer would be Hood. And I think my third answer would be Tesla. But you can kind of rearrange those any way you want. But I think those three, for the next decade, you give me 10 years, Palantir, Hood, or Tesla. I think it's not the hardest thing in the world to pick between those. You guys are saying Trump is live. Let me see if he's live. If he's speaking after he talked in Congress. Let's see. Oh, yep, he's live. Here we go.
And among the debt ceiling cliff that's approaching and all the other problems, this is the bill to do it. I think we're going to get it done, Mr. President.
The Democrats want to raise your taxes. If this doesn't work, if this doesn't get the numbers that the Republicans want, and I think it does, I think it's all Republican votes, the Democrats are going to be raising your taxes by 68%. And they will not do the we're going to have an 85% cut in drug costs. 85% cut in drug costs. The Democrats, the drug prices are going to go up. I can't imagine a Democrat not voting for this. I think the Democrats, if they don't vote for it, that means they're voting for an increase in drug prices. Think of that, versus an 80 to an 85, maybe 75, but could be an 85% cut in drug costs. Okay.
Mr. President, will you need to reach out to individual members? We need to make a pitch to individual members.
I don't think so. No, that's what I did today. That's really what we did today. I think it was a really great, that was a meeting of love. Let me tell you, that was love in that room. There was no shouting. I think it was a meeting of love. There were a couple of things that we talked about specifically where some people felt a little bit one way or the other, not a big deal. And I covered them. It wasn't so much a speech. I covered certain points. And I think I'd be very surprised.
You told them you were losing patience.
No, I didn't tell. Who told you I said I'm losing?
That's what we heard inside the room.
It's a lie. Wait a minute. Wait. Who's told you that?
We heard from people inside the room.
Oh, really? It's totally true. I never used the term. I didn't say losing. I didn't even talk about it. In fact, it's the opposite. I think we're going to get it done. I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule. Anybody that told you that is a liar. Wait a minute. I never mentioned the word losing patience because I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule.
That's why I asked you. I want to get
but why don't you go back to your source and tell them they're liars if the source even exists?
Senators are already talking about making a number of changes.
Sure, always
Is
have.
that okay?
Yeah.
You want them to swallow
Yeah,
this bill?
in some cases they have things that I like even better. No, it always happens. There'll be some changes. But John Thune and Mike have been very closely aligned on this. They've been moving it up together.
Apparently you said don't ask with Medicaid accounts. You did say in the room
there is some concern among some Republicans, including Senator Josh Hawley, that this could impact benefits and there could be amount to quote hidden tax on the.
I didn't say, here's what I said.
I'm wondering if you're.
Here's what I said. What do you want to say?
Those members who are
I
worried
said
about blowback
waste,
supporting this bill.
fraud, and abuse for Medicaid. If you find waste or fraud or abuse, we want to strengthen Medicaid. We want to strengthen Medicare. Waste, fraud, and abuse. The Democrats will let illegals be on. They'll destroy it. It will be destroyed. They want to have illegal immigrants be on. And if you do that, because it wasn't designed for that. Waste, fraud, and
Can you
abuse.
guarantee that your voters who supported the election, particularly working class voters, will not lose health insurance under this bill?
Oh, they won't lose health insurance. Not only that, remember, I'm cutting drug prices by 85%. And right now, I'm saving it. I'm saving the whole thing because I did something that nobody was willing to do. Other countries pay a tiny fraction what we do. And I instituted favored nations. We're now going to pay the lowest in the world. We're going to be the equivalent of the lowest country in the world. People go to London, they go to Canada, they go to other countries, many other countries, because they want to buy their pharmaceutical products, their drugs, at a fraction of the cost. Now we're going to have the lowest cost anywhere in the world, and nobody else would do that but me. And that might be an election by itself, might be election winning. Now, when you add that in, when you put that into Medicaid and Medicare, we've just strengthened Medicare and Medicaid. And the Democrats won't do that. You know why? Because they're taken care of by the drug companies. And the ones that are taken care of are hard line. Some Republicans get money from drug companies, and that's okay because they're okay with it. I talked about it. The drug companies take care of everybody. It's the biggest lobby, most powerful lobby in the world. There's no lobby like that. But the Republicans are okay with it. Not only okay with it, they love it. It was time. So we're going to cut drug prices from 75 to 85, in some cases even more than that. You know, I was telling the story that, and some of you were at that news conference. I gave a news conference where I was the first one in 18 years to cut drug costs for the year. And they were like a quarter of a point to half a point less. And I was very proud of that. Now I'm cutting them by 80, 85% because I stopped the scam. This was a scam between the middlemen and the drug companies. This was a giant scam. And by the way, and other countries, because other countries fought for this. This was a giant scam, and we're not going to have it. So remember this. Go back and tell your people, if you'd like to, that the Republican Party is cutting the cost of drugs by as much as 85%, not 8%, not 5%, not 1%, 85%. And you're going to have the lowest drug prices anywhere in the world because I'm doing favored nations, and it's all done. I signed it, and the Democrats will unsign it, and the drug prices are going to go up. And I think on that issue alone, you can't lose an election.
Mr. President, say that your DOJ is weaponizing it with the arrest of a congresswoman, Democratic congresswoman.
Oh, give me a break. Did you see her? She was out of control.
Did you address
You know, those
that?
days are over.
Did
The
you
days
tell them
of
to do
woke,
that?
the days of woke, no, I didn't. The days of woke are over. That woman, I have no idea who she is. That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over in this country. We're going to have law and order.
Mr. President, thank you very much. You campaigned on lowering the price of groceries. How will you justify cutting food assistance in this bill?
Let me just tell you, the cut is going to give everybody much more food because prices are coming way down. Groceries are down. Eggs. You told me about eggs. You asked me a question about eggs my first week. You said eggs. I said, I just got here. Tell me about eggs. And it was going through the roof. You know that eggs now are way down. Everybody's buying eggs. Groceries down. Energy's down. Gasoline is now they're buying gasoline now for $1.99. If you look back, you'll see $3.50, $4. This country, we're going to lose this country. Our country now is respected all over the world. All over the world we're respected. We were a laughing stock. The entire world we were a laughing stock. I went to the Middle East, and those rulers of those three countries are very powerful people, very big people, very rich people. They respect our country again. China was going to take them over. You know, China was going to they were going to get into if you look, Saudi Arabia, You take a little look what was happening with Qatar, UAE, great people, unbelievable leaders, but they were abandoned by this country. And they're not going to China anymore. They love us, we love them. We're going to take care of them, and they're going to take care of us. We came back with $5.1 trillion. Trillion. Every other president would have come back having spent $5.1 trillion as usual. And remember this, we were losing $5 billion a day under the past administration. I have to be a little careful the way I talk, because there's a lot of anger about that administration. And by the way, the real question, who ran the auto pen? Okay, who ran the auto pen? Because the things that were signed illegally, in my opinion. I think we've just proved that. But our country is respected again. All over the world, we're respected. We were laughed at 7 months ago. Then you had November 5th, and our country is respected again. Thank you.
All right, so that's it. You've been listening to President Trump speaking after.
All right, Trump's trying to get this bill passed. He is trying to get this bill passed. The 3 headlines from that is, I can guarantee no one will lose healthcare underneath my bill. I am cutting drug prices by 85%. And every Democrat should vote for this. If not, you know they are taken care of by the drug companies. So there you go. Look, he's fighting for his bill to get passed. This is what every president needs to do. Obama did this. Trump 1.0 did this. You know, you go to the finish line, and you got to talk with the people that disagree with you, and you try to get the job done. And so 64.68 right here on Robinhood. Tesla 345. I think he'll get it passed, but obviously there is some opposition in his own party internally that he's trying to deal with. And that is going to be the next hurdle for him to get the job done right here. S&P 500, are we green on the day? We are 593, basically flat, down about 0.3%. Market's not really being affected by Japan. Market's not being affected by what Elon said, outside of Tesla going from 354 to 345. I guess that was a little bit of a pump while he was talking, but that's kind of died back down, up about 1%. And market's also not being affected by any of this budget bill being passed. I think the 10 years kind of already priced in that it will increase the deficit. We'll have to have some solutions for that. But as of now, stock's not necessarily being affected. Tesla just tweeted about the new Roadster. Let's look at that real quick. Did Tesla tweet about this? Yeah. Okay, cool. There you go. Is this, I don't know if this is the exact video, but this, oh, no, this is not the right one. Let me check if it's a Tesla AI account. They've been a lot more active on Twitter, posting a lot more stuff and kind of showing off more things. That France video they showed with FSD last week was also crazy as well, which was pretty cool. Okay, so I don't see the Tesla Roadster tweet right here, but I do have this tweet from them last night showing off a different thing. But I don't see the Roadster tweet right now. In general, Google, that's the big one that's coming out. Yeah, who knows when this Tesla Roadster is actually coming out. But, or the Tesla Semi. I mean, those two, we got to get those back up and running. But the Google event in 2 hours, that's going to be a big one. So I'll be live again at 1 p.m. and we'll be watching Google. I want to show you guys one more thing before I leave, and then we'll be back at 1 p.m. for Googs, hoping Sundar can deliver on some pretty interesting stuff. Now, we also have another Elon interview at 2, and then we have Trump live at 3. So to be honest, I think the Google event is just going to go until the market close, because you have Google, then you have Elon, then you have Trump, and then by the time that's done, we probably have 3:45 and the market's closed, or we're getting ready for the market close. So I think it will be a long stream starting at 1 p.m. and we will take that into the market close. And then I think we still have Technical Tuesday today, if I'm not wrong. So that's going to be like 2-3 hours. So it's going to be a long day, but we'll be covering a lot of stuff. Here's the one thing I want to show everybody before we leave. Nadela and Satya, that made no sense. Nadela and Huang, because his first name is Satya, had a conversation yesterday at the Microsoft Build conference. They talked about AI. They talked about LLMs. They talked about a lot of stuff. We saw the conversation he had with Elon yesterday. Here's the conversation he had with Jensen. We'll watch this, and then we'll be done for the market open today.
At that time to talk about all the great innovation you were bringing to our Azure and how customers were going to benefit. And in fact, in the last 2 years, you've sort of continued to push the real frontier of innovation. And you and I have talked a lot about how this may be, again, the golden age of both silicon, hardware systems, software systems all coming together. And one of the things that I've really learned so much from you in sort of saying, look, at the end of the day, our joint goal is to be able to deliver more intelligence to the world. In some sense, you can even say it's tokens per dollar per watt, right? That's sort of what ultimately is going to help the world flourish. And so I just wanted to be able to maybe get your perspective on all this, maybe starting, in fact, with the very start of what has been our industry, which is Moore's Law. You've really taken this Moore's Law and put it back on hyperdrive. And maybe you want to speak to, in fact, right behind me is a signed GB200 from you, and we are now just about putting that into massive production. And so I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how this is actually working generation to generation in terms of just the benefits of Moore's Law.
So excited to be here, Satya. In fact, 2 years ago, we had just launched the largest AI supercomputer in the world together on Azure.
Right.
And then right now, as we speak, we are in full production with Grace Blackwell. We are ramping and scaling and building the largest AI supercomputer in the world in Azure. And so this is just an exciting time, literally 2 years later.
Well, by the way, this audio is so crisp. Why can't they have this audio on the earnings calls? Like, this is such good audio, but then on the earnings calls, we can barely hear him. So like, they need to bring some of this AI into the earnings, especially this earnings coming up on May 28th.
During that time, we've innovated across the entire stack. This is the big change in how computing works now. Instead of just the processor running static software, if you will, everything about the stack has changed. And so our processor has changed. Our NVLink has changed so that we can scale up to a much larger compute node. It's liquid cooled. The architecture is FP4 Tensor Core. We now have the ability to connect Grace and Blackwell coherently over a super fast link. Very important in the world of KV caching as we talk about these large agentic model and agentic workloads. And so all of this stuff combined with our new CUDA algorithms and new model technology in your new AI infrastructure on Azure, together, all of that together, 40x speed up over Hopper. 40x speed up over Hopper. That's just an insane speed up in just 2 years.
No, it's just unbelievable. And in fact, that type of compounding of S-curves, right? Your innovation, our innovation coming together, ultimately driving that frontier forward is just unbelievable. But one of the other things you taught me, which I'll always remember, is that speed of light execution between even the two organizations is a way to deliver that, right? There is, in fact, in our fleet, as you can imagine, we have all the generations of NVIDIA and the new generations coming in. And you want to speak to a little bit of what Moore's Law and speed have to do with each other when it comes to driving innovation?
Yeah, this is the insane execution of our two organizations now hyperlinked, if you will. In fact, when technology is moving 40 times per generation, and it's 40 times every 2 years, you really want to upgrade every year. You don't want to wait every 4 years, build out a giant fleet. You want to build out small amounts at every single year. And each year, let's say it's 10 times faster than the last year. And as a result, you cost average, if you will, or inverse to that, performance average up your entire fleet. And so you want to innovate, and you want to integrate new data centers, new computer architectures every year. The complexity, of course, is the work that you and I do is not about building PCs anymore. It's building these giant AI factories. The scale is incredible. The technology is insanely complicated. And for our organizations now to be innovating every single year requires really tight integration. And so that's the challenge, but the benefit's incredible.
Yeah, and I think that point about that physics of the fleet, right, continuously taking advantage of what comes out each year and that compounding of that 40x improvement every 2 years, let's say. And then the fleet itself will be there for 4 years, 5 years, and the benefits of it go all through that period. In fact, talking about that, one of the other things you mentioned this even in, when you talked about the first point, which is the software. The innovation you're doing in CUDA, some of the system software work that we do end to end, the app, we talked a lot about even the new app server for AI that we're doing, even something like even just, when I look at an application and its performance, whether it's latency, COGS, even the smart techniques of prompt caching, plus everything else that happens, just makes a huge difference. But you want to talk about the compounding effects of software that then add to all of what we're doing together?
This is just incredible about computing architectures that are stable, that are programmable, have a rich ecosystem. So meanwhile, while we're sitting here executing from Pascal to Ampere to Hopper to Blackwell to next generation, all of our software architectures are compatible. As a result, the rich ecosystem of tools and all the developers that are developing on it, they're anxious to develop on it because the install base is so large. They're anxious to develop on it because the ecosystem is so rich. And all of that enables them to invest deeply into enhancing their models and their algorithms and their runtimes and orchestration layers because it affects and benefits the entire fleet. And so while we're sitting here executing new generations of architectures every single year, we still want architecture compatibility. We want the rich ecosystem to be stable so that software developers' investments and all of the AI developers' investments and all your infrastructure customers' investments get to be distributed and amortized across the entire fleet.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things we're very excited about is given the fleet we now have, we are able to take advantage of these software advances across the entire fleet. And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand, that even the things that were shipped from you multiple years ago benefit from software advances.
That's right.
Continuously.
Hopper. We've been shipping Hoppers to you now for 2 years. Over the course of those 2 years, through new algorithms, let's just say Transformer, let's just say Llama 70B, over the course of the last 2 years, we've improved the performance 40x. Blackwell to Hopper is 40x. Hopper on Hopper has been 40x over the last 2 years. We did that through all kinds of things like in-flight batching and speculative decoding and all kinds of new algorithms that sit underneath the inference engine. And we're willing, and of course, all of the researchers and all the developers, they want to invest in improving the architecture on CUDA because they know the install base is so large. Whatever work that they do will benefit a lot of the fleet, and many users will be able to benefit from it. And so you're willing to dedicate your entire, all of your heart and soul into optimizing the algorithm and the architecture because the install base is so large.
So that's so well said, because in some sense, the latest GB200 coming up means some of the folks who are doing the cutting edge new training will go there. And at the same time, we're also providing, for example, in Azure Container Service, some of the sort of software gains of the fleet on the GPU fleet so that they can run any agent on it. So that ability for us to be able to flex the fleet for the various different parts of the frontier of latency, COGS, and performance is just fantastic to have.
Yeah, your engineers and ours are at this moment optimizing runtimes on Ampere, A10s, A100s. And the beautiful thing is because of our natural understanding of the importance of preserving, enhancing developer productivity and developer value for the life of the architecture, we support software and we fine-tune software for as long as we shall live. And so
that's right.
And all of that is just, between our two companies, we're dedicated to all the developers.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. And then the last one I wanted to unpack is another thing. You talk about sort of GPUs is sort of more broader than just one AI workload. It is this accelerated compute vision you've had, quite frankly, for the longest time. But I think that also is a massive benefit to us because that also means we can bring many, many different classes of workloads. That means customers can use this fleet for, of course, the cutting edge AI, but many workloads. But you want to speak a little bit to what happens to utilization and the diversity of workloads that get all accelerated?
One of the benefits of CUDA is that the install base is so large. Another benefit of CUDA is that on the one hand, it's an accelerator architecture. On the other hand, it's fairly general purpose for some of the heaviest workloads. Our two teams are working on accelerating data processing.
That's
accelerating data processing by 20x, 50x. Transcoding video, image processing, models of all kinds, recommender systems, vector search engines. All of those different types of algorithms map wonderfully on top of CUDA. And so with our computer scientists working together, we can accelerate one workload after another workload, one after another workload. And so as this tail, if you will, the long tail of GPUs and all of the frontier models move off to Blackwells and Futures, we leave behind this compute fleet, which is still orders of magnitude faster than general purpose computing that can be used for all these different workloads. And so our job is to make sure that that fleet and that workload, all of the workloads of your data center are fully accelerated. The fleet is fully utilized for the entire life of the fleet.
No, that's fantastic. And so well captures that real essence, right? Ultimately, it's not just tokens, but it's all workloads per dollar per watt. Can we really accelerate them all as we continue to innovate across both the hardware and the software boundaries and really have the compounding effects ultimately show up for our customers? So thank you so much, Jensen, for the partnership. Thanks to everybody at NVIDIA for the amazing work that you all are doing. And it's great to see these two companies that have worked from the very beginning on many of those architectures to come to this point where there is complete new, I would say, emergence of computing that none of us could have ever imagined, but is, I think, going to have a very profound impact. So thank you again.
And
dude, it's pretty incredible. Obviously, Microsoft really expanding their momentum. They did the Elon interview, the Sam Altman interview, and then the Jensen interview over the past couple of days. They are bringing a lot of these new models to Azure, and they need a lot of infrastructure to be able to make sense of those workloads and to scale them, especially if you think some of these AI companies are going to continue procuring compute from Azure. And that's where NVIDIA comes in. And so it seems like the market, again, is continuously catching a bid. And it kind of felt like in March, people stopped caring about AI, but it just feels like a whole different vibe right now, especially based on all those investments we got last week. Here's another thing that we just got from Sam Altman like 5 minutes ago. ChatGPT daily active users have increased 4x over the last year. Messages per day by much more than that. Meaning the user growth daily, not monthly or weekly, daily, is up 400%, which, I mean, they got to be close to 800 million to a billion users. And then messages per day, I would imagine, are way more than 4x because people use it every single day, multiple times a day. At the same time, the engineering team has greatly increased reliability and is now making real progress on speed. Significant scale to be doing this at. Great work. This is super bullish NVIDIA. In particular, because if a lot of people are using the reasoning models or the deep think models on ChatGPT, you need a lot more compute. You need a lot more tokens. Jensen's talking about kind of imagining the world via tokens because tokens are kind of the new currency in which we engage with information. And I would imagine Google will talk about it today, but also this is incredibly bullish for the overall aspect for what AI can look like. Last thing I want to show you guys before I leave, I know I was going to leave after that NVIDIA clip, but there's one more thing I got to show you guys. Speaking of AI, speaking of Jensen, speaking of NVIDIA, speaking of OpenAI, getting companies to use their APIs, which are leading to all of the growth in users and revenue that OpenAI is getting. Klarna, they're getting ready to go public. They put out a video yesterday of an AI version of their CEO presenting their Q1 2025 results.
Hello, hey, guten Tag and hola. It's me, or rather my AI avatar, here to share Klarna's Q1 2025 highlights. We're starting the year strong and 3 things really stand out. 1, we've hit 100 million active consumers, the fastest growth we've seen in years. 2, Klarna just delivered its 4th consecutive profitable quarter. And 3, AI is now deeply embedded across our business, unlocking efficiency and record-setting growth. Let's break that down. Revenue rose 15% year on year to $701 million. The US led the charge with revenue up 33%, and Klarna remains the biggest pay-in-4 provider in the US, processing 4 times more volume than our closest competitor. And what's behind all this growth? AI. AI is helping us work smarter, scale faster, and deliver more value, from customer support and marketing to insights and product development. We're now on track to hit $1 million in revenue per employee. Very cool. 100 million consumers, profit, growth. And AI is the engine driving it all.
So they're obviously trying a little hard here with the AI thing, but I think the narrative they're trying to bring to the street is that they have, you know, an AI thesis to their company, and that's why that's at least one of the ways I think they're going to try to go public and be able to say, hey, our call centers, our marketing, all this stuff is automated via AI, and they did this whole AI deepfake thing to kind of present the fact that they're an AI first company. Now, although they have 100 million users, which is cool, unfortunately, what the guy didn't say in the video is that they're not profitable. Klarna losses widen as more users miss payments. 100 million now are on the platform. So although people are using the buy now, pay later, they're kind of only doing the first part and not the second part, which is the pay later. And that's also consistent with another piece of bearish news that I got to give you right here. I'm not just a permabull. Here's some more bearishness right now. More than 6.5% of borrowers are at least 60 days late on their car payments, the highest level ever recorded. This chart came out yesterday from Bloomberg's subprime 60-plus delinquency index. So you do have a lot of people adopting Affirm and Klarna. Now, Affirm is actually profitable, so they're a little bit more mature. But Klarna is showing some losses, even with all the usage. And then you got these car payments that unfortunately are not being paid. Again, 6.5% of borrowers are at least 60 days late. That means they're 2 months late. This is the highest level ever recorded. Last time we saw this was back in 1997. Then we saw it kind of get up to that 4% range in 2011. Went really down back in 2021 when interest rates were obviously very low. So it was kind of easy to make those payments. Now that rates are a bit higher, yeah, people are not paying their car payments as much. Does this impact SoFi? Well, I mean, the main impact here is that the Fed needs to cut rates because there's an argument around, hey, people are being delinquent and that's why they're not paying their car payments as much. There's also an argument that they finance their auto loans at such high levels that either A, they're losing their jobs and they're not able to afford it, or B, the interest payments are just too much for the average American, which is why, I constantly tell everybody here that if you're in the investor class already, if 6.5% of borrowers can't make their car payment and you're over here talking about, oh, I only made 20% instead of 30% on my covered car. It's like you're just in a totally different world, right? And it's something that I think we can't take lightly. It's a very serious thing to be part of the investor class and have the money to even be able to invest and allocate, given a lot of people can't pay their basic bills, right? So look, it's bullish for SoFi if the Fed cuts rates, and that hopefully allows people to refinance some of their auto loans, mortgage rates, et cetera, which is good for SoFi in terms of its momentum. But until we get those rate cuts, I don't know how that's going to be good for any of the lending companies. Because if anything, I'm pretty sure you can get an auto loan with SoFi. I've never seen that, but I think you can. I know they do mortgage more than anything. But if you have an auto loan with SoFi and you're not paying back your payments, now granted, SoFi does a lot of checks on people. They try to really get people that have high FICO scores, have high incomes that are going to pay it back. But that could be something that could create a little bit more of a delinquent quarter for SoFi. Now, granted, I don't think that's going to be the case. SoFi's delinquencies actually peaked back in March of 2024. If you look at the data, and it hasn't really recovered to those levels. And I hope it, doesn't get back to those levels. So I don't think that there's going to be any big impact on SoFi. But the broader impact is on the economy. Why are people not paying their car loans, their car payments? And it might simply be because there is some weakness in the economy. So this is one thing that we have to keep an eye on. This is one of the reasons I don't think 2025 is a rocket ship type of year like 2024. There are some bear arguments here. I don't think this is like a reason to sell your stocks. I just think this is potentially a reason why either A, the Fed will cut rates, or B, we'll see some weakness in the economy, and maybe the byproduct of that weakness will be cutting of the rates. I'm just hoping that J. Powell doesn't wait until, 20% of borrowers can't make their car payments, and maybe he realizes at 6.5% it might be time for some pain relief in regards to the way the interest rates are currently set up right now and how it's affecting obviously mortgage loans and auto loans right now. So it's one of those things that we got to keep an eye on. Again, Klarna, really nice that they've got this whole AI earnings video call, but they're not profitable. And this is not just a business that's not profitable. This is a business that literally relies on people paying them back eventually to become profitable. And as of now, their losses are widening. So it's one of those things that we have to keep an eye on around auto loan payments, credit card payments. I'll try to get some data on that later today. And then obviously with some of these buy now, pay later companies as well. All right, now I'm out. Let me do word of the day. I'll be back for Google I/O event. That's going to be a big one. We'll see what Sundar can do. I put a poll in the chat. Do we think he can get to 170 after the event? 67% of you say yes. I'm going to go yes. I'm going to go yes. It's $3. I think Sundar can pump at $3. I think they can introduce some good stuff. Hopefully some stuff that really blows us away. And that would be very exciting for Google. Word of the day is glows.
Glows.
To explain away. The intern tried to gloze over the missed deadline with a flimsy excuse about traffic. The company attempted to gloze the scandal with a speech about resilience and learning. Okay, it's not glaze, but I am definitely glozing all day, if this basically means to talk. And when we talk about Alex Karp, then I'm definitely glazing as well. But yeah, I guess I am a professional glozer, which is what I do. So there you go. Amit, did you go to Stanford? No, I went to Palo Alto for an event, and Arnie was there, and that's when we got these hoodies. So this hoodie always reminds me of Arnie because we both got these together. But I did not go to Stanford. I went to Rutgers, not Stanford. All right, cool. That is it. I'll be back at 1 p.m., probably 12:55. So get some lunch, get some food. If you're across the world, get some dinner. If you're going to stay up late, this is probably going to be a 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. stream because we got Google, then we got Elon, then we got Trump. Trump's making a ton of announcements with this Golden Dome stuff based on what I'm seeing. And then we have Market Close, and then we have Technical Tuesday. So it is going to be a long, long day. But regardless, we got to cover it, and we'll get into all the details that we got going on today. All right, cool. That's it for me. Thank you, everybody. We'll be back at 12:55 p.m. Eastern, so in about an hour and a half for the Google event. Bye, everybody. Have a good one. See you guys in a bit.